Wildlife Commission to order. Chair Finley is otherwise detained, so I'm chairing the meeting. I think everybody else is here except Commissioner Woolley, who's in transit, stuck in traffic, so he should be here momentarily. I think the field reports were sent out in writing. Is there anything additional? Jeanette?
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. Vice Chair Weber. No, field reports are delivered in written form, so if you have any questions, we'll have to follow up on those. Expenditure report, as I mentioned to you, I think in an email, Cameron Smith is our acting Deputy Director for Administration, while Bill Herber is on some extended family medical leave. And Cameron Smith contracted the same threat that I had, but he's about a week behind me, so he is out sick today. You do have a financial report in your packet. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on that report. I would just sum it by saying that our budget development process is still well underway, and we've completed the inventory, fixed inventory, or fixed audit, that's traditionally the purpose goal system, as well as our cash balances and finances remain in a very nice state. And I would add that we continue to work on our operational excellence, as you've heard from Mr. Herbert in previous meetings.
Are there any questions? Holly?
So I was just wanting to see if you could review with us again, what kind of cash flow are we hoping to see in dollar cents per month? It looks like we were like at 30 million or whatever.
Right.
How does that compare to what we ideally are looking to have?
Well, that's a really good question, and I'll just tell you that our monthly operating expenses are about $13 million per month. And for an entity like us, we believe that an ideal ending fund balance, that is cash balance on hand, is 3 months minimum operating expenditures, which is $39 million. I'll say at least over the course of my career, we've never, we have rarely, if ever, achieved anything in that. Typically, so our informal target was to maintain 1 month. So that would be about $13 million cash. We've come from the low point, I guess you could say, a couple of years ago, where we had months that were literally at zero. Our ending balance was at or near zero, and we're now solidly in the $27 to $30 million range. So it's a very good place. We don't worry about making payroll at the end of the month.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, did you have a question?
No, I would.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Then I'll move on. That takes us to the state of the agenda where we need to adopt temporary rules. There are 7 temporary rules on the CAN agenda that require your ratification.
Do I hear a motion?
May I first just put a question to staff on temporary rules? The temporary rules are related to the Dungeness trout fishery due to the malic acid testing, and I receive a lot of questions, not always in the form of a question, from trout fishermen regarding what the thresholds are and the process and where the rates initiate from, where they come from, and what ODFW's role is in that. So I wanted to ask, not right now in this meeting, but for staff to maybe present us with a briefing or a memo on how this relates to federal and other state rules and what our process process is, because it's going to become more frequent, and it has a huge economic impact, as you know.
Sure. Sure, yeah, we're happy to do that in either form, either in the form of a briefing paper or an actual briefing for the commission. It is complicated. There's obviously a nexus between the Department of Agriculture's authority and their testing, but of course we manage the resource, so I don't say make sure that Chris or Ed, and in fact Chris is taking note of that, so we'll prepare that material for you.
It'd probably be better to have a presentation as opposed to a paper because you can ask questions.
I would like to have a paper maybe as well. Presentation because I'm getting the same thing even though it did not go as far north on the coast as Astoria, but they generally start out, are you kidding me, one dam grab, and then it goes down from there. And I can't answer it.
Okay, noted. Thank you. So that's
So we still need a motion.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that, I'll move to approve the temporary rules as set forth in the 10 agenda, rules number 1 through 7.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the temporary rules. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you, Vice Chair Weber. Then the next item under the Director's update is we wanted to provide you with an update on our limited landowner preference tags. The mule deer review that's underway. I have in the audience here today, Dr. Doug Cottom, our new recently hired Wildlife Division Administrator. I want to give you an update on that process. And it's one you're certain to hear more about, I think, in the coming months. So,
Chairwoman, members of the Commission, Secretary Officer, for the record, my name is Doug Cottom. I'm the Wildlife Division Administrator for the Department. Well, I'll start with a little history. We had the landowner preference program began all the way back in 1982 when we started eliminating general season hunts and with unlimited tags and started going to control hunting. And we, at that time, when we started limiting opportunities, we provided 2 tags for landowners so that they could be able to hunt deer and elk on their own property. And it was sort of a non-monetary compensation form for providing wildlife habitat on the property. And over the years, the statutes and the rules have changed somewhat. And currently now, depending on acreage, some landowners can receive up to 14 landowner preference tags. The statute, at least the portion of the statute that houses landowner preference, sunsets every 4 or 6 years so far. And last time the sunset it was 2013, so we started working on revisions, and at that time there was an agreement to implement the new elk landowner damage program statewide. That was a pilot program in Southwest Oregon for several years. And we also had an agreement to limit landowner preference tags for mule deer in those wildlife management units that were under the winter population management objectives. And when the statute was revised, the statute enabled the department to say basically we may be able to come up with a formula to limit those tags, which we did. Currently it's 5 tags or 10% of the available tags to the public are used for mule deer for the landowners. And we had, it was unsettling to several people, and we've had comments the last couple of years. And back in just last year, the Wildlife Division committed to meeting with a group of landowners, landowner representatives, hunters, hunter groups to discuss potential changes to the rules. And we just completed our second meeting with that group. They've given us some advice on how they'd like us to move forward, and so we will be bringing to you some proposed rule changes in more information. That's it.
I think you commissioners, you've heard about this. I think under public forums several times over the last year and a half. The the current structure, the current proportion of the tags that we allocate under this limited landowner preference system is really, frankly, it was arbitrary. The 10% number, there was no analysis that drove us to 10% of the tags for the private or landowner preference tag holders. So we're taking as Doug said, a fresh look at that. And obviously there's certainly in some units some discourse over that allocation. So we're looking at that and seeing if there are other alternatives or ways to determine what the appropriate proportion is, as opposed to just the arbitrary 10%. Thanks, Doug. So, Mr. Vice Chair, that takes us to the public forum. We have a number of folks signed up under public forum. And I would just remind folks in the audience that public forum is an opportunity for individuals to talk with the Commission. The Commission can't take any action on anything under public forum, of course. We have to do appropriate notice for any action. Nonetheless, it is an opportunity for folks to speak with the Commission and the Commission to direct them to work with staff or ask questions. So I'm going to shuffle the order here a little bit out of deference to my good friends from the Burns Paiute tribe. We have a couple members here. I think Joe De La Rosa was signed up and he was not able to make it, but Dean Adams, who's the Vice Chair of the Burns Paiute Tribal Council. Jarvis Kennedy is here as well. I don't know, here he comes. Jarvis Kennedy is going to come up and join Dean, and they wanted to talk with you about ceremonial hunts. I believe that's the topic.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. My name is Dean Adams. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Burns Paiute Tribe.
My name is Jarvis Kennedy. I'm the councilman of the Burns Paiute Tribe, second in arms.
And today we're here to honorably and respectfully talk about our tribal ceremonial hunts, if we can allow our tribe to get back to our hunting subsistence where we could make a healthy nation. And so in our goals and our efforts, we don't have any type of hunting regulations right now or hunting with the state agreements. And so the problem is that we're right next to the town of Burns, and we have an overpopulation of deer in the midst of our both of our reservation and the town of Burns. We only hunt 700 acres between 200 members, and really we don't meet our needs for deer and elk to have a healthy nation. We would like to ask ODFW at this time if it was allowable to permit the Burns Paiute tribe to have ceremonial hunting, only a small number of deer, small number of elk. But on the bigger scale, bigger stage, we're asking for our tribal members to be allowed to carry on our culture of subsistence of hunting and fishing, to which we could at least, stop our train of going to Safeways, because we are a very unhealthy nation. 60% of our tribe has diabetes or obesity, and we have we're locked into where there's too much snow and conditions in Burns. So we would like to ask if we could possibly have a hunting regulations, which we would work with each other. We're only asking for a ceremonial hunt of maybe six elk, maybe 8 deer. But in the meantime, we're still asking for hunting privileges with the state of Oregon in our southeast Oregon territory, possibly working with you to allow our tribal members to hunt for their families also. Jarvis could add a little bit to that.
Good morning. And altogether, we've got like 413 tribal members, and half of those live on our reservation. And we're only allotted 6 LOP tags for deer, and I think where our lands are at, due to waterfowl hunting during that same time our season is. We have to kind of like rub elbows and this and that while they're out there as well. And when they're out there, they chase our game away with their shotguns and so forth. So most of the times our tags aren't even filled. So what we want to do is come and work with you guys, like you said, our ceremonial hunts. At times we have funerals, and during the old days, that's what we do. We go out and kill an animal so we can feed the families that help with the funeral process and so forth. You know, and as we all know, groceries these days are pretty spendy. And there's hardly any jobs over there, so we kind of depend on the deer and elk population to feed our own families and people. We don't got a lot of people that hunt over there, but the few that do provide the nourishment and food for the whole tribe, even our elders. So we're asking you guys if we can, like Dean said, work on the process for our ceremonial hunts, for our celebrations that we have, and so forth, because that is part of our traditional and ethnic background to hunt animals and feed our people and the guests that we have as well. So that's why we're here today, and trying to work with you to see what we can do. We can collaborate and get our minds together and try to keep our traditions alive. And that's why we're here.
And we are one of the 9 federally recognized tribes, but we are the only tribe that doesn't have a hunting agreement or hunting allowed with ODFW in the state of Oregon. So honorably and respectfully, we would like to work this process with you guys and to see if it is allowable to at least let us bring back our culture, our way of living, our way of life to be a healthy nation again. And so this is why we're coming to you in this format, because we wanted to, openly discuss work and work side by side with you guys to try to achieve this, hopefully by this hunting season if possible. Because we're again, we live in Southeast Oregon, but we're inundated with out-of-state hunters that are just everywhere, and we don't, we've put in for many tribal tags within our Silvies Valley and Mont here, but we never get those tags either because we just can't get into the draw system on a routine basis. So we just want to work with the commission and basically let you guys know who we are, where we come from, and I have just want to read this small little letter from one of our elders who wanted to give me this before he left. His name is Cecil Dick, and he's on the Steves Mountains Advisory Council, but he's an elder on our tribal council. He says, I am sharing some of my personal thoughts on the hunting proposal to you. This is only coming from our families and our families who have their own stories. As a youth in the 50s, I remember my grandparents hunting the deer and antelope in the Stinking Water vicinities. We also hunted the small game such as ground squirrels, groundhogs, and rabbits. We also gathered plants for eating and medicinal purposes. In the valley, we gathered and collected cannabis roots from the various ranchers. They also talked about the big bucks in the Steves Mountains and how hard it was to get dirty necks, animals referring to the elk. As Native people, we use all the various parts of the animals and nothing was wasted. We only hunt for our needs. To my knowledge, we hunt and fish the lands where our people and ancestors hunted. Our people will have survived many hardships, Bannock wars, forcibly removals, not recognized as a citizen of the United States, nor allowed to go to school, self-determination, and purchased our own reservations lands. Our people are requesting the right to exist in our homeland because all lands have been taken. Hunting is a big part of our native existence. We thank you for this time. Thank you, Cecil. Just a little letter from our seniors and wanted to let you know something right there.
And also, just for your information, we're one of the 9 tribes here in Oregon, but we're not a treaty tribe. We didn't sign up documents to give up our land. We didn't sign up documents to give up our hunting rights. And basically what happened to our tribe is we got killed off, we got ran off, and we got shackled 2 by 2, marched up to all these forts. And even though we're a small tribe, we stood that ground and never gave up our land, let alone our hunting and fishing rights. So I just wanted to tell you guys that and put that in so you, for your own information. But we'd really like to start getting back our hunting and fishing rights for our own people.
Well, thanks, Dean and Jarvis, for bringing this to our attention.
Thanks, and there are a couple questions, but I guess before we go to that, I want to also thank Dean and Jarvis for making the trek over here. I know it's a long ways, and I don't even like coming to Portland. I live an hour from Portland, so really appreciate your efforts to be with us here today. And Bruce, Eddie, and I and Chip Dale traveled over to Burns. I guess it was about a month ago now, or 3 weeks or a month ago, and met with the full tribal council as well to talk about this. And we have some ideas. We talked about some ideas on things we can do together, not just related to hunting, but also related to advocating for our wildlife populations as collaboratively. And so really appreciate the efforts and look forward to working with you. And I know there are a couple questions. So.
Well, Director Melcher, you may have already answered my question. I was wondering if lack of federally recognized status is a barrier for the fire department for developing some type of agreement with the fire tribe.
Sure. Well, lack of federal recognition would certainly be a barrier, but this tribe is federally recognized. They do not have a treaty. They don't have a signed treaty with the United States government.
That's correct.
But they are a federally recognized tribe. So if they were not federally recognized, then yeah, we would definitely have a barrier.
Bruce?
Vice Chair Adams, Councilman Kennedy, thank you. It is a long drive to do this time of year. I think the respect that you show this commission should be reflected back upon you, and we do that. Thank you. Would you please extend our thanks to Elder Jay for his letter? I'm an old guy. I know it takes time to sit down and write stuff, and it's hard because of the memories that it brings up. So I'm heartened by what our director has said, and that those discussions have begun. And please keep us posted, and hopefully it's going to work out. I think you'll get I look forward to seeing something that we can support. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you also for coming. I live in Enterprise, so I know what a long ways is to drive. And I also look forward to seeing what we can work on together. I did have a question. You said that you were looking for a certain number of tags for ceremonial purposes, and then you set up, besides that, additional hunting privileges?
Ultimately, we would like to get our ceremonials first to get that, because we can work that, no problem. It's limited, very limited amount of animals. But all in all, to make sure that we're subsistence with the foods that we need throughout the year, we do need to have membership hunting clubs. And we're a small nation. We're not asking for 1,500, 2,000 tags. We're only asking for 200. And if that could be possible, that would be the best outcome for both of us. I mean, our tribe, our community, and our way of living.
Okay.
Now,
Yes.
back in those days, we didn't have borders. We went everywhere. Our people are kind of nomadic, and we always follow the game. And we're just trying to get back into that situation where we can feed our own people. And so, but like Dean said, we're just trying to get our ceremonial hunts in first, and work on that process, and work on the other processes later on down the road. We're in no rush. We're just trying to sit here in front of you guys and let you know how we feel about our people, our ceremonial hunts first. And whenever we get to that bridge, we'll get there. But we're in no rush. We're willing to. We want to work with you guys. We want to talk with you, collaborate, and try to see what we can have.
Well, thanks.
Anything further? Well, thanks again, and I assume we'll see you sometime in the future.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this time and opportunity to do this. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thanks. Safe travels. Next up then, Mr. Vice Chair, we have two individuals to talk with you about the statewide tags. That would be Mr. David Bender and Mr. Al Elkins. I spoke to the guests, they are here.
Thank you. Chair Weber and members of the commission, Director, also remind for the record, I'm Al Elkins with the Oregon Hunters Association. In December, January, we had contact from Mr. Bender, who was with me today, with some issues about hunting with the statewide tag. And so we have worked with the department a little bit. Mr. Bender has with Mr. Cottom and Ms. Hearn about the issue, and we would like to have further discussions with the commission today and continue our discussions with the department. Mr. Bender will make the presentation on the issues he's had with his purchase and use of statewide tags. Thank you.
My name is David Bender. I live at 37617 Elizabeth Drive in Lebanon, for the record. I was a successful bidder on one of the 2016 statewide elk tags, as well as the 2015 statewide deer tag. I'm bringing my concerns today to the commission in hopes to extend the statewide seasons. The tags are auctioned at a premium dollar to improve wildlife and habitat in Oregon. I feel that to continue to increase the revenue generated by these auction tags, the successful tag holder should have the best opportunity possible to harvest a trophy animal. The number one way to increase the ability to harvest a trophy animal is to extend the seasons, in my opinion. The individuals that bid on these tags should be at least at a minimum the first ones in the field and the last. Here are some of my observations and recommendations. There are two best times to harvest trophy deer now. Early season, while they're still in their velvet, before they shed when they're still patternable and not nearly as nocturnal, and in the late season when they migrate to their wintering grounds. Oregon currently has the earliest closing statewide tag of all western states that have a statewide tag. I attached, I think, to the handout in Exhibit A that has all the states' seasons and dates that they close. Next point is, in the northeast zone alone, or northeast area in the synopsis, there are 26 different elk hunts that extend past the November 30th closure, that run past November 30th. That results in 4,141 additional tags of hunters past November 30th that are already out there in the winter ground, and I attached that as Exhibit B. The point there is, in my opinion, there's little to no additional impact on the wintering grounds by the very small handful of statewide tags. I think there's 3 or 4 and maybe a combo tag. So, I mean, it's a very, very small group compared to the 4,000 hunters that are already in the field. I don't see any impact there. Subsequently, Oregon statewide tags bring far less at auction than any of the other western states' tags do. So there again, if the goal here is to promote this, market it, and generate some income, I think there's some improvement that could be had. So with that said, I see no reason to not extend the season if the goal is for the auction tag holders to be successful so it can be marketed. So I propose at a minimum on August 15th to December 31st at a minimum. I'd like to give you some quick examples. In 2015, when I had my deer tag, I was excited about it. I work hard. I was out scouting all spring, all through the summer. I located several bucks. Was pretty excited waiting for the September 1st to open. To my disappointment, 5 days prior to my statewide tag season opening, the general season over-the-counter archery season opens 5 days prior. So I had an onslaught of archery hunters hit the field, blow the animals out. Here I sat. So as you can imagine, it was incredibly frustrating to know that all my hard work was foiled over an over-the-counter hunt, especially after spending a large sum of money for that tag. This last year with my elk hunt, on the back end of the season, I ran into the same things. The weather came in late this season. So, you know, you wait for the elk to move into their wintering grounds, the bulls bachelor up, and when the weather hits late, that November 30th, in my opinion, is just too big of a gamble to hope the weather comes. If the weather doesn't come, the elk move in December, and there he's set. So that's basically what I have to say about that. I've hunted dove tags in other states. I actually went to New Mexico this last year, right after the Oregon season ended, and I killed a great bull on January 1st because their season runs until January 31st. So, in conclusion, let's try and make these tags what they should be, an opportunity to have the best chance possible to harvest a trophy animal in Oregon. Let's put Oregon on the map as a sought-after destination for hunters, and subsequently raise more money for habitat and conservation along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Bruce, just one quick, and Mr. Bender, thank you. If you don't mind telling us, I guess we can look it up. What did you pay for these tags last couple of years?
I think I set the new record for elk last year at $49,000. And I think the year before I paid $32,000, which was the second highest for the deer tag. So it's not chump change, you know, but
No, and
but it's for conservation.
I'm going to use it to talk to my wife about what I spend on thank you very much.
And any other questions? Because I was going to say that I'd be happy to work with the department in terms of looking at these issues and maybe coming back with something.
Yeah, I think obviously public forum, we can't take any action here. I think Mr. Bender knows that as well. But, Bob, if you want to, Vice Chair Weber, if you want to work with us on that, that would be great. So 2017 regulations are already published, and those tags for this current year will begin going at auction, I think, perhaps tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. So, you know, if there's interest in doing something for 2017, I guess we need to be very careful in terms of how we're going to implement that. If the intent is longer term, I just want to clarify
Wait, no, I think, I don't think it's very practical as far as 17.
So you want to work with us as we develop the 18.
Right, and see if there's some justification and way we can make it work.
Very good. Well, I think Doug's still here in the audience and make note of that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our last individual on public forum and commissioners is Jim Wells.
Good morning, Commissioners. I've seen you many times in the past. Jim Wells from Astoria, representing Salmon for All. Chair Weber and Commissioners. There's two handouts. One is a chart showing language allocation. And the other one is it's pretty interesting reading. It's a editorial from the Daily Astorian about how Washington State should follow Oregon on killing. Very interesting reading. So I thought you might like those. First and foremost, I wanted to thank the four commissioners that supported the commercial industry at the last meeting. I realize it stirred up a lot of controversy for you as a group and individually, and I'm sincerely sorry for that. I want you to know that the people of the Lower River really appreciate the stand you took. It means a lot to us. So that's the main reason I came down. Maybe our industry should push our legislators to endorse removing the three commissioners who voted against us. But we don't operate that way. We try to present the facts and stay on the high road. Maybe that policy has led to our industry's near demise. I can't believe how consistent bad behavior gets rewarded. As a society, we hold our elected officials and people in power to a higher standard. That's why the governor's letter to you four is so disturbing to me. Not only is she trying to coerce you into doing something you felt was unfair, but she broke her word to me. I met with her and she promised to stay out of the process, to let the appointed commissioners do their work. When your word means nothing, there's no honor left. Commissioner Atkinson's perspective on why this is not a conservation issue is spot on. Even Bill Bakke of the Native Fish Society agrees it's strictly an allocation issue and has nothing to do with conservation. Commissioner Atkinson made that clear in the 2 pieces that she's put out for public review. And it's very good work. We talked about the allocation a little bit here. It is easy to pass something 80-20 or 70-30, but when you break it down into available fish on declining run sizes, yeah, that's a whole different thing. So first of all, if you look at that Willamette chart, this is something that needs to be addressed. And I brought it a couple of years ago to the commission, and there was no action taken on it. The runs were bigger then. It wasn't quite as worrisome as it is now. If you look at the schedule, I marked 40,000 on there. And 40,000, the commercial share is 15% of that. This is hatchery fish in the far left column. It's not wild, it's hatchery. At 40,000, the commercials get 15% of the Willamette. And once it drops to 39,999, basically one fish, you drop to 1%. And so for this year, that's why I'm bringing it to you. For this year, the hatchery amount of fish, Willamette fish, is in that 32,000 to 33,000 range, and we get 1% of that. So as it shakes out on that, the sport fishery comes out with 9,950 fish, and we get 325 fish. And if this policy is focusing our income over to select areas, we at least have to have enough fish to run our select areas. And this 325 Willamettes is not going to do it. So it's ridiculous. I'm not asking, I know there's a lot of controversy right now, and I'm not asking for a big official change in this thing. I'm just asking for assurance, if you could work with staff somehow, assurance that we could have enough fish just to run our select areas out of this. And like I said, this is hatchery fish. So I don't know why they should have 950, 9,500, we have 325. So that's the point there. We need some kind of assurance that we can get through this year, run our select areas, and then maybe deal with this matrix when everything else settles down. So I'm going to look at the spring, the 80-20, just quickly. The sports in their lower Columbia River Zone 6 and snake fisheries, they got 8,700 springers. We have 610 fish to work with. This is all we have.
You need to wrap up.
Okay. The last piece, then, I will say, I wish I had a handout for you. This chart, it's generated by staff. And I took notes on this one, so I can't give it to you. But it's a side-by-side breakdown. It's a table X of the Washington policy and the policy that Oregon has now. And it just shows the impacts. And 75-25 Washington, 66-34 where you guys are at now. We need to keep that 34% LRH because the numbers I told you about for spring and summer, we can't run a viable commercial fishery on those kind of numbers. We just can't. We're going to depend on the fall fishery. Zone 4 or 5 Gillnet alone, we lose $1 million if you go to the Washington plan. Overall, without the spring and summer, we lose about $1.4 million. And the real telling part is the angler trips. they only gain 3,280 angler trips, worth about $213,000. We lose $1.4 million, so they can gain $213,000. So I don't think that's too good for the regional economics. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and appreciate the stand you took.
Thank you. Any questions? Great.
Please tell us the source of this table.
That's Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife matrix.
Hi, thank you. That table, Chair Weber and Commissioner Woolley, that table comes right out of our administrative rules. We have rules in place that allocate the Willamette Spring Chinook purposeful surplus, if you will. So that table is actually embedded in the rule. You all are not familiar with it because it hasn't been, we haven't made any changes to it in, I think the last time was at least 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. So, but it's right up.
I think my question maybe is more for Kurt or for the fish staff. I understand that the Columbia River used to have a matrix management scheme. And what was that in a short description? And why don't we do that now?
Well, Chair Weber, I keep trying to say Finley. Chair Weber and Commissioner Atkinson, we've had several different matrices that we utilize to allocate harvestable surplus or ESA impacts over the last 2 decades. And generally speaking, the one that's most commonly referred to, and there was a couple of different versions, but were used to allocate spring chinook. And they were built on the concept that when the Willamette run was large, because the commission hadn't adopted allocation framework for Willamette spring chinook, when the Willamette run was large, the commercial allocation of upriver ESA impacts increased in order to allow access to that Willamette allocation, which was under law. It's in rule. And when the runs were small, the allocations shifted to favor the recreational fishery, where there was not as large a need for as many impacts in the main stem to access as Willamette hatchery chinook. Of course, it was a matrix, so there was there's two vectors there. There's the size of that river run, there's the size of the Willamette run. I think one of the reasons that we've not been using that is, one, it's complicated, and when you have run sizes that change in season, it's hard enough right now to manage when we adjust fisheries to adjust for in-season run sizes. When you have a matrix where both different run sizes are driving allocations, and those run sizes are changing in season, it gets complicated. So I think I'd have to go back and look, but I think that was one of the reasons.
So then how do we address whether or not all of those hatchery fish can be captured or caught? Given the varying run sizes, if we have allocations that are set, like I guess one of my concerns is if we have an 80% allocation to recreational fishers and they're unable to catch all those hatchery fish, and we have issues with conservation issues related to PHOS, that we don't want those hatchery fish on the wild run spawning grounds. How do we address that flexibility that's needed if we don't have that opportunity to adjust the allocations?
Well, the PHOS issue is really the fall chinook. And so what we've been talking about here is spring chinook. I think it's important to remember that I think you can go back. There may have been a couple of years very early in my career, but that may not have even occurred, where I don't think the commercial fishery has achieved its allocation of Willamette spring chinook, except on the very small run years, where the allocation was essentially almost zero. They rarely if ever achieve their allocation, and that's because of other constraints. Those other constraints are typically never a prescription. Then it's important to remember that the recreational fishery continues to fish on those hatchery fish essentially at every turn. So turn off the Columbia, the Willamette, they get fished on there, and hatchery fish from the Willamette Falls, turn off the Clackamas, the Sandy Ann, Yenzi, fisheries continue to occur with those hatchery fish. So that allocation, when we talk about the Willamette, spring chinook table that Mr. Wells has handed out, that recreation allocation applies across the basin, not just in the basin. It's complicated.
Bruce? Jim, I would appreciate getting a copy of that graph you couldn't hand out. If you scribbled it up.
And we have that Chair Weber and Commissioner Buckmaster. I believe that's a handout from the advisory group.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's a handout that the staff handed out to the commercial advisory group, maybe the recreation advisory group too, this last couple of days ago. So that's the penalty. You just got the $5 penalty too.
Yeah.
We requested.
So we'll deliver that to you. Sans Jim's notes.
So we requested a side-by-side comparison, and that was complied with by the department. It's pretty interesting reading.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
And Mr. Vice Chair, that completes the director's update. We would hand off to you for Exhibit A.
Chairman Weber, I'd like to apologize for being late here today. I'm an elected official from Placer County. I wouldn't take too much of your time if I was allowed to speak. I would have been here sooner and talked to you sooner, but as you know, there was a bunch of slides on the highway, so I had to be a little bit late. I promise not to take too much of your time if that's possible, sir.
Yeah, come on.
2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple minutes, Bill.
Okay. And I won't sit because I'll jump right back up. My name is Bill Hunsinger. I represent the Port of Astoria and the commercial fishermen and the sports fishermen, so I wanted to speak on 2 items very quickly. I'd like to thank all of the Fish and Wildlife Commission, not just individuals. Obviously, I'd like to thank the individuals that take a bunch of time to research and listen to all the statements of all the people that have come before you and very knowledgeable of what was going on in the Gitshopper plant. I'd like to thank all of you for that. The second thing is I read the article on Oregon Sports Live of how nicely you guys were treated yesterday. And I will tell you this, I'm a board commissioner. When I raise my hand to be a commissioner, I try to do the best for the people that I represent. And I feel that this commission has actually did their job and paid more attention, obviously, than Washington. Washington didn't add any more fish to their select areas to help this thing work. They actually took fish away. So thank you for that. Another thing, Mr. Weber, I'd like to tell you is that I'm here representing the sports fishermen and guides and charters of the Columbia River that are in my district. And the reason I am is I know that they'd like to have a sports fishing season on sturgeon. I would like you guys to take a close look at the numbers, listen to your staff report that Kurt Milcher will give you, and look if there's a possible way to help them out. It'll be a tough thing to do, but I also represent those people. So anyway, once again, Chairman Weber, thank you very much for your time, and once again, commissioners, thank you very much for what you did. And I always stick by my word. So, and personally, it's really been good working with people over the last 5 years. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thanks, Bill.
And I guess I was mentioned, Bill, that there is an opportunity under the sturgeon agenda item to testify if you're so inclined. So again, if you have more you want to say on the sturgeon aspect, you can sign up under public testimony on sturgeon item.
Thank you, Kurt. I will look at that. I'd like to get back because they're doing a bunch of construction, but we'll figure it out, and I'd like to do that also. Thank you.
Understood. I just want to make sure you do. Mr. Chair, that completes the public forum. I'll hand it off to you for today.
Okay. We're to the minutes. They were provided electronically. I had one question about the minutes, specifically January 20th, and this is really, it's not a specific to an item, but there was quite a bit of discussion regarding the Columbia River, and we didn't include a lot of that in the minutes. And we do have the videotapes, and I don't know if they are part of the record, if they're archived, if people can access those, which would resolve any issues about the inclusion of additional information.
Mr. Chair, the audio is part of the permanent record. So we save those, and we do get public records requests for the recordings, the digital recordings of the commission meetings. I believe the video, which was live streamed over Facebook or Twitter, we don't have that. There is a link to it, so people can go back and look at it, but we don't actually physically possess that file. But we do have the audio files.
Well, what I'm thinking about is the audio file something we can put into the record of the minutes so that somebody can access it without going through a records request?
Gotcha. Yep.
I don't know if that's, I don't want to have Michelle having to go through volumes of information if it's otherwise available, and kind of keep it to our decision stuff.
And on a similar note, I guess one of the things that I've been just recently apprised of is that state parks, for instance, their commission, they don't take any written notes other than the action items. They record the vote, who made the motion, what the vote was. The entire record of the meeting is a digital record with no notes. And so Michelle is now exploring whether we have that same latitude. Because frankly, from my perspective, having a staff person spend 2 to 4 days a month going over the video or the digital recording and transcribing notes is, in the 21st century, not necessarily a wise use of time. So I would like to get us to a place where the permanent record, the digital recording is the permanent record. The only note-taking, no written document is essentially recording what the votes were, who made the motions, the legal aspect of such.
I don't know if there's any thoughts by the other commissioners.
Well, I think of the recording of the meeting is available to people. It seems like that actually is even more efficient than having Michelle trying to interpret what we said and say it in some reasonable way that it makes sense and interprets what our intent or what we said. I think that's a good idea.
Would it be the consensus that, assuming that it's legal, that would be an appropriate way to record what we do? I think we agree. Generally, everyone's nodding, so.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll continue to explore that in coordination, of course, with DOJ.
Okay. Well, we got the minutes for December 2nd. 2016 and January 20th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes from December 2016 and January 2017.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of December and January. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're to Exhibit D. Chris.
Good morning, Chair Weber, Commissioners, and Chris Kern, Deputy Fish Division Administrator for Columbia Marine Programs. This should be a fairly quick agenda item for you today. We're going to present a couple of recommended updates for the Columbia River treaty fishery rules. And these are stemming from discussions that take place at the U.S. Oregon table. Under the current agreement, I just included the preamble here. It highlights the primary function of the U.S. Oregon process, which is coordination and reaching an agreement on how we manage the river in terms of fisheries. And so I just wanted to highlight that as really a key piece of this. States and the tribes both hold regulatory responsibilities for fisheries in the Columbia River. We coordinate on that because of the areas we all share. What I'm talking to you about today is all about the areas between Bonneville Dam and McNary Dam, so nothing below or above that, and just treaty fisheries. Each of the entities involved have, from the state and tribal perspective, have the authorities for promulgating and enforcing their own rules. And so we have a high focus on trying to achieve coordination of those rules, make sure they're consistent across those jurisdictions and enforcement capabilities. The parties formed in the last agreement, which is still in effect, was called the Regulatory Coordination Committee, and this was designed to try and fix some of the past inconsistencies in rules for fisheries in this area between the states and the tribes. So that group was formed to advise the Policy Committee, which is the formal decision-making body within the agreement, on ways to achieve those consistency in those rules. And so their main tasks were to review the regulations in place, identify places where they're not consistent, and then notify the Policy Committee when they find conflicting regulations. And they have also been providing recommended solutions for consideration of the Policy Committee when they find those. And they've worked on several issues. I'm going to bring you two basic ones today. So just very briefly, the Policy Committee again is essentially the decision-making body amongst the agreement. Parties, however, will need to recognize that all of those parties then need to go back to their actual authority base, which in our case is you, for adoption of rules for the tribes and tribal councils and things like that. So you reach some agreements at the table, but then you have to go back and put them into place through your regular processes. But the committee is really designed to facilitate cooperative action between us all in regard to fishing, and frankly, it's worked very well. Especially over the last 10 years, we're in a really good place with this agreement compared to what got us there was the court case back in whatever that was, a long time ago, where things were not very good. So I mentioned there's several ongoing issues that the RCC is discussing. They have brought consensus recommendations, and by that I mean consensus within that subgroup, to the committee on a couple of issues so far. Continue working on the others. One was retention of prohibited fish, again within the treaty tribal fisheries. That was brought to the Policy Committee, and the committee decided that it was recommended to initially focus on the sturgeon aspect because that was the most obvious inconsistency. The committee referred that to the Sturgeon Management Task Force for their review and comments. That's a sub-body between the tribes and states that discusses sturgeon management in those same areas, Bonneville and McNary, for both sport and tribal fisheries. And the task force had some comments back to the Policy Committee, which led to some more tweaking of some of the language. And then the RCC also brought us a recommendation for some consistency measures for tribal identification and also marking of fishing piers. On the sturgeon issue, the current Oregon rules for these fisheries do not provide requirements related to releasing sturgeon. Some of the other rules we have for other fisheries say must release immediately or release unharmed or both. We didn't have that in this rule, and all the parties wanted it there. The language that you have in the proposed OARs addresses a few things. It includes fish that would be released because they're not of legal size. There's another fishery that has a size slot where you under or over that size slot, fish must be released even during a regular fishery. And then there are fish that are caught incidental to other fishing that wouldn't be kept anyway. So the language refers to if you catch a fish that is in one of those categories, release it within some certain parameters of time and things like that. So that's why that language is worded the way it is. It may sound a little funny, but that's the genesis of why it's that way. On the ID and marking, these are essentially the ways that Oregon already had for by and large. We just changed the language so that it reads the same way across the multiple jurisdictions. There's a few additions and tweaks to we may have had a requirement for marking to be placed on the top buoy of a net, and this may say it's placed on the bottom buoy or something, different like that. But the requirements are essentially very similar, and so these are really about making it consistent. It's not so much a change as a consistency issue. That's it. It was a short agenda item summary. It was a short presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Great.
Thank you, Vice Chair Reporter. I just want to reconfirm, Chris, in terms of the composition of the RCC, that tribal members were embedded in each of these areas for decision-making purposes, policy, legal counsel, enforcement, fishery management representatives. Were they all involved?
Yeah, Chair Commissioner Woolley, absolutely. The RCC is made up of representatives from all the parties of the agreement, which include all 4 tribes, as well as, I don't know that the federal entities were involved in the RCC because they're really state regulations. I believe they had members from PRICFIC Enforcement, which is the intertribal enforcement body, as well as OSP and Washington Police representatives. So all the representatives under the agreement were in there, which implicitly includes all the tribal reps as well. Yeah. And on the policy committee, the same. All bodies have 1 policy rep and 1 legal rep on the policy committee, and that again includes all 4 tribes. Actually includes more than that. Includes Shoshone-Bannock and a few other folks, as well as the federal entities. So yeah, wide range of all the folks that are affected. And I should have mentioned, these are, I think it's in the summary, the sturgeon rule actually, as I understand it, has already gone through all the tribal councils for the 4 treaty tribes that fish this area. The ID regulation is, as I believe, maybe even this week, going to Yakima Tribal Council for their consideration. I haven't heard that it's gone to anybody else yet, but we have all agreed to take them to our lawmaking bodies.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Kurt had something to add to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, just for the record, I guess, that the USC Oregon process, of course, is a court order process, so it's different than a public process. There is not, I just want to clarify, so you understand, there is not public participation in the USC Oregon. It's a court order process. There is certainly tribal representation, as Chris mentioned, across and throughout all the discussions, but it's not a public process. I just want to make sure you do that.
Bruce?
Yeah, Chris, thanks. What are the differences, if any, between what we're adopting or what we're approving on sturgeon retention to what we require for sport and commercial retention of our other fishermen?
Sorry, Chair, Commissioner Buckmaster, I don't have them in front of me. I think the difference is that they both non-tribal commercial and non-tribal sport, I believe, include the words release immediately unharmed in that direct fashion and simple fashion. This has a little more language in it than that. So they are different. And I'd have to look them up, but I think that's the gist of the difference.
Anything further? There is no public comment, or no one signed up for public comment, so if you have any additional questions, now's the time. If you don't have any additional questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I move the motion.
Are you moving to the draft motion?
Here we go. You guys get involved. You do this. I move to adopt the amendments for two rules for Columbia River System treaty entries as reflected in draft 004s shown in attachment 3.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to adopt the OARs. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, the seconder was Mr. Buckmaster.
Yes. Proudly, I might add.
Proudly. Okay.
Okay, we're to Exhibit C.
Good morning, Chair Weber, Director Doctor, members of the Commission. For the record, I'm Tucker Jones, I'm the Ocean Salmon River Program Manager. Today, I'm going to give you an update on the Little River clusters. Briefly today, we're going to go over sort of where things stand in the Lower River with long-term population metrics. We're going to talk about the results of our 2016 stock assessment of the Lower River, and we're going to talk a little bit about the status of Lower River recreational sturgeon fisheries. I guess because depending on where you sit in the Pacific Northwest, Lower Columbia River has a variety of different meanings. I have some Canadian colleagues who believe that everything south of the border is the Lower Columbia River. Today, I'm actually referring to just this area downstream of Bonneville Dam, downstream of the falls, and out to the mouth. The metrics we're going to be talking about today, generally speaking, the abundance of legal-sized fish. These are fish that can access the estuary, the ocean, fully utilize all of the marine resources that would be available to those fish. They're about 38 to 54 inches sport length. They are the size that until recently we did have retention fisheries on. Also going to go over where we are with our adult abundance. These are fish that are larger than 65 inches of sport length. Centimeters wouldn't be very big. They're about 25 years old to reach sexual maturity, and they can spawn. We're going to talk about the population size structure today. This is important because if you have fish that are sort of juvenile dominated, you know you're getting consistent annual production, and if that's shifted to the right, then that's not good. It shows you productivity issues. Age zero recruitment, we go out in the fall every year and look for young of year white sturgeon. This is sort of our finger on the pulse of these things. And then although not sort of strictly, I guess, population metrics, we're going to talk about pinniped predation. This is largely stellar sea lions. There's a small amount of predation by California sea lions, but it's really sort of minimal compared to the impact of the stellar sea lion. And then we'll just briefly talk about sport fisheries as well. Of course, when we're talking about these population metrics, we will talk about them largely in the context of the conservation plan that was adopted by the Commission back in 2011, and try to show you where we are with regards to both the conservation status thresholds and the desired status thresholds for the population. I guess skip sort of to the results. We have about 730,000 white sturgeon, bigger than about 2 feet in the lower Columbia River, based on our latest population estimate. About 220,000 in the legal size slot. This figure shows not just the abundance, but also the size structure where they goes. And so while I think an interesting and important take home is we have a lot of legal fish here right now, and we still more juveniles than anything else. This hump we would like to be substantially bigger, and this hump, while we like seeing these numbers, in the context of things, relatively speaking, we don't like to see that as big compared to the juveniles behind it. Sort of broken out and just showing you sort of the variability around the estimates for each of these sizes. Juvenile white sturgeon, so those fish can't really access the estuary. They don't osmoregulate in salt water. That's the most of the population, so about 500,000. You can see there's quite a broad range of confidence interval around that. Legals and over-legals make up in the conservation plan the subadult component, which when we're assessing against the conservation plan, we look at there. Together there's about 250,000, and then the adults about 6,000 on the latest estimate. Quite a bit of variability around these estimates. There's a lot of white sturgeon out there. Even with a pretty intensive effort, we don't get to touch that many of them, which leads to sort of these wide confidence ranges. This is something that's going to get better with time. The mark we use for white sturgeon is a pit tag, and it was a mark that was, that's a marriage made in heaven, basically. You have a fish that can live to be over 100, and a mark that can last as long as it, essentially. So every time we touch those fish that have a pit tag in it, we get more information on that fish. It's going to allow us to refine a lot of our estimates, and those numbers I expect to come down over time. Prior to 2010, the only ability we had to look at these fish was through fisheries-dependent assessments, which is not sort of the gold standard within fisheries management, and it only allowed us to look at the legal size population. So while we had a pretty robust estimate using that method, we weren't able to look at the broader picture with fish. And we weren't able to tell what was coming and what was going. In 2010, we started doing these annual stock assessments using our set-line gear, fisheries independent estimate. These things are moving forward. And as you can see, through time, at least within about the last 10 years or so, we had a dip, which we predicted. We're coming out of that within the legal size population, which we also predicted, and things are trending well, and we have more fish than we've had in that legal size slot in quite some time. Actually, the adult abundance on the y-axis, we have a number of fish in the thousands. On the x-axis, time. The conservation status here is the 3-year running average of adult white sturgeon. The desired status, the same number. What you can see is that over the last several years, we've sort of been just hovering right around or just under that conservation status level, which is not great. It's one of the triggers that sort of, I think, instigated moving to eliminating retention fisheries. That estimate this last year has definitely gone up. That's a good sign. We're now above the conservation status threshold here, but we have a long ways to go before we get to the desired status threshold as well. White sturgeon recruitment. So this is the catch per net of those 80 sturgeon that we go out and look at each year. The conservation status based on our modeling, the sturgeon, because they live so long and they spawn multiple times, are sort of protected against lean time. So it takes a lot of basically recruitment, absolute recruitment failures to sort of really jeopardize these populations in terms of the overall population. This can definitely put fisheries at risk, but it's not really putting the population at risk. So we're looking at 5 years or more of total recruitment failure for conservation status. The desired status, we've been doing this for about, again, 10, 11 years. At first, when we were down here, we didn't know exactly what constituted good or average or poor. As we build this sort of record, we're starting to get a better handle on that. We had catches sort of between 1 and 2 young ear sturgeon per net. In 2009, we had an absolutely outstanding year. That's also when we were just sort of, or I guess now we're starting to think it was outstanding, but that was also when we were developing the conservation plan. So when you know what bad is, but you don't know what good is, but you know where the best you've seen is, that's kind of how we set that level. Since then, those levels have been substantially lower. Whether this is related to the hydro system or pinnipeds, there's a lot of ideas out there right now, but definitely those recruitment levels have been less lately. This is playing out in our population size structure as well. I've mentioned before that hump is still that juvenile number is still most of the population, but it's not as big as we'd like to be. Right now, that juvenile number is about 65%. Our conservation status level is 60%. The desired status, we want to see like 95% of our fish in that juvenile range. If you have 95% of your fish at juveniles, that tells you, with white sturgeon, that you have a robust adult population that are successfully spawning annually and recruiting those fish into the juvenile population, ultimately into the legal sub-adult sizes, and then into the adult population. So we're at 65%, and this is actually down last year from about 69%. So not looking good and trending not in the right direction. Sort of moving out of those conservation and access thresholds, talk a little bit about predation by stellar sea lions again. Sort of the conventional wisdom among sturgeon researchers was that once the sturgeon reached a certain size, especially once it escaped that legal fishing size slot, it was relatively, I don't want to, I guess, phrase bulletproof, but it was, unless it succumbed to senescence or natural mortality or age, there wasn't a lot that could hurt them. Around about 2005, when stellar sea lions showed up in the lower Columbia River, that is a lesson that we learned was not necessarily true. So, as I said, stellar sea lions first showed up at Bonneville Dam in the Lower River around 2005. This is a little bit of a busy figure, I apologize, but we have sort of the maximum counts per day at Bonneville Dam and then average numbers through time. And you can see that basically for both California and stellar sea lions, these numbers are growing annually. There have been some variability in those counts, but the overall trend is up, and that's problematic. Sorry, just catch up on minutes. What have we seen with regards to predation? The only place we actually can measure this is at the concrete there, Bonneville Dam. The observation program is run by the Corps. So this is just a minimum estimate of what's going on within the river. But as those sea lion populations grew, we saw those predation numbers go up and up and up. And then in about 2012, we saw those numbers go down dramatically. And in the last several years, there's been very, very few sturgeon predation events observed of the Bonneville Dam. At the same time, remember those stellar sea lion numbers have gone up. Now, I don't believe this is that they have killed all the sturgeon. We look at our population estimates, we know those numbers are going up. We know the adult numbers are at least holding steady and seem to be trending up. But if the sea lions being in that area have caused sturgeon to adjust their behaviors, that is, there are sort of two known spawning areas in the lower Columbia River for white sturgeon. It's sort of the 4 miles downstream of Bonneville Dam, and then sort of a similar area within the Williamson River downstream of Atlantic Falls. And if the sea lion presence has sort of adjusted behavior so that the sturgeon are not going to where they need to go to spawn, and that is definitely going to give a productivity hit in an effect. I also want to bring your attention to sort of a growing issue. I mentioned the Willamette is the other area where sturgeons spawn. The last several years, we've started to see stellar sea lions show up below Willamette Falls, sort of 1 to 2 per year. 3 preceding years, we've seen up to 4 this year, although I think the last thing I heard from Robin was that they vacated the premises. But we've also seen an increase in the number of predation events at Willamette Falls. So that's also not a good thing for sturgeon and sturgeon productivity. Talk a little bit about sport fishery. 2013 was the last year that we had any retention fisheries in the lower Columbia River. You can see we had about 33,000 overall angler trips, about 17,000 within the estuary. I think you saw some of these numbers last year. When we went to catch and release, only those number of angling trips just dropped off really, really precipitously. Sturgeon, I think, sort of thought of as a retention fishery. That's what they were marketed as. Those trips were, people sort of thought of this is going out and catching food and bringing it home. I think it's taken a while to convince people that going out and just fishing with them, catch and release can be a good day's fun. I think that started to catch on. We saw a slight uptick last year. People are starting to realize that you can go out and spend all day catching 5-foot-long fish, that could be a pretty good time also. So we saw a slight uptick in the number of angler trips last year. So I hope that's a trend that continues. So to tie it all together, I guess, briefly summarize what we saw. Within that legal abundance, about 220,000 fish. That's a big increase from 2015. But that's, you know, a big number and a good number of fish. The adult abundance, that number is now up. The conservation status threshold, would we like that to be higher? Yes, definitely we would like it to be above the desired status threshold. When you have that big adult population, it allows you to rapidly increase your population when the conditions are right. But we seem to be trending in the right direction with that, so that's also been population structure. The juveniles are only about 65%, and they're trending down from last year, down from the year before, so that's not heading in a good direction. It's not at the conservation status level yet, but it's not a positive indicator. Our recruitment index, 2016 was the 7th consecutive year with a very low levels of recruitment seen in the lower Columbia River. I guess I might add that this is still, I would say, as hard as it sounds to hear, the envy of the sturgeon world. If you look at a lot of other sturgeon populations in the Snake, the Kootenai, the Fraser, the Sacramento, they would be happy to have really any recruitment annually. And then the Willamette recruitment number has been up. We've seen just a generally increasing trend in that population metric. Sea lion abundances are up. They continue to be up, and as long as they are up, and until something, the sturgeon figure it out or we figure it out, that's going to be problematic for white sturgeon populations. The fisheries participation is still down from during retention days, but it's up from the last year. I guess what are the conclusions I'd like to leave you with today? Lower Columbia River white sturgeon, we're not necessarily where we like to see them. This is not a population that's in danger. Again, this is we're talking about fisheries in danger. We still have more than 500,000 fish bigger than 2 feet in the Lower Columbia River. The adult population has been stable and slightly increasing over the last 5 years. It's not projected to decline. No retention fisheries, we escape more fish through what will be the slot if we ever started fishing again. Those numbers are just going to continue to go up. The legal abundance is up and the trend is positive there. That's a good thing. With no retention, as I said, we're escaping more every year. There are definitely productivity issues with this population, but sturgeon, their life history is designed, uniquely to defend against this sort of thing. When you live 100 and you start spawning in 25 and you spawn every 3 to 5 years, it's designed to guard against long periods of low productivity. The Kootenai population still have sturgeon up there and they haven't had successful spawning in 50 years. So they're designed to protect against this, and when conditions get right, when you have a big adult population, they have so many eggs that they can really rapidly rebuild those population numbers very quickly. The sea lions are, still problematic as well. So I guess sort of that mix of signals within that dashboard that we looked at, some green, some yellow, some definitely red, sort of have us in this spot right now where we're at. We're not really recommending any changes to the fishery structure at this time. That's it. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have right now.
Questions? Jim?
Tucker, my question is, it's kind of good to hang your hat on your comparisons, how well it's doing. But where are we going to go with the sea lion problem? I mean, it's not a danger now, but do we wait until it is? Now where's man on the food chain here? I'm just trying to figure out why they're so protected. Obviously, I think it's federal, more than the state. But what do we have to do to address this before it becomes too late? What's your thoughts?
Chair Weber, Commissioner Biddle. So sea lions in general are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Sculler sea lions are also protected under the Endangered Species Act, which really sort of ties state hands with regards to this. There are active monitoring and have hazing programs for Californians. It's a lot trickier when you're talking about impacting an endangered species versus one that is not endangered currently. I think that the consensus throughout the coast is that Sculler sea lion numbers have rebounded quite a bit. And so really though, until they're delisted, there's not a lot we can do other than sort of document the problem and do what we can. We're definitely actively trying to do things, but again, we don't have a lot of tools in our toolkit with regards to that.
Thanks. I would just add, bear with my voice here, that the Commissioner Biddle, the Sculler sea lions, there's two distinct population segments. The Eastern Pacific segment, which are the ones that come to Oregon, to the Columbia River, were actually recently delisted. So they are no longer ESA listed. So they're now just protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act. However, the federal act has provisions for the states to use lethal control on sea lions, but only where, and it's in the language is very clear, only when it's jeopardizing illicit fish, illicit salmon species, I believe is what the law says. So the short answer, before we could ever do anything to control California sea lions or Sculler sea lions that are impacting sturgeon, it would essentially take a change to the Federal Marine Mammal Protection Act. We are doing lethal control on the California sea lions, but we're doing it under, because of the impact on ESA listed salmon in Colombia. And so we did receive a permit to do that work. We've been doing it for about 5 years now. And just actually renewed our permit for another 5 years. And just sure there are some public testimonies on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I had several questions. On the different size categories of the juvenile, legal, and the over legal and adult, are there some age classes that kind of match up with those? I think you mentioned 25 years or reaching adult age or size.
Chair Weber, Commissioner Aikenson. Ages sort of match up with sturgeon, so those legals it takes about a sturgeon about 10 years or so to get there, but really growth within sturgeon is really variable, and those different sort of maturity stages are really more size dependent than age dependent. So if you grow really slowly and it takes you 40 years to get 6 feet long, you're not going to be an adult until you're 6 feet long, and then it'll take you 40 years. Conversely, if you're in an aquaculture setting and you're getting fed every day and your water is very warm, you can be there in 6 or 7 years. So it's sort of size-based. And about 38 inches fork length, right, sort of that lower end of the slot. And of course there's some variability around the edges, but that's when they move from juvenile to that sub-adult or size range, and they're able to go to the estuary. Before that, they're sort of confined to fresh water. They're just not able to handle the salt water at that point in time. And then once they've reached that, they can access those marine nutrients. You can see some increases in growth, and they grow through until they reach that adult size. So again, about 10 years to get to the legal size slot, but a lot of that depends on the growth that's out there.
So the other thing I was kind of surprised with the size is if the adults are the only ones that are breeders, we basically are looking at 1% of the population is a breeding size.
Chair Weber, Commissioner Aikenson, that's correct. That's what we would actually like to see, less than 1%. If you have a population that's still 1 million fish, 1% is a substantial number. And then because they're really, really fecund, they can produce millions of offspring annually. And then if they're doing that, you have that juvenile dominant size structure. And then, really in theory, you could scrape every single adult off. And because you still have 990,000 fish out there, they will continue to recruit through and grow through, and the population will be okay. And that is essentially what happened in the 1890s, where the sturgeon were largely fished out of the Columbia and Snake rivers, at least the larger ones.
So this really, well, I guess it's not a super high level of the juveniles, but the fact that we are seeing that reproduction, do you think that's mostly from that 2009 year?
I think sorry, Chair Weber, Commissioner Aikenson, that is definitely probably a large chunk of that, but like I said, growth is variable. We saw recruitment before that. We're seeing recruitment still now. I think that the 2009 year class is probably bolstering that number, but that year class is going to move through the population, and that's why there are really strong classes behind it, and that population number is continuing to go down. As it moves through and it's a large class, it's going to be a big chunk of the percentage, and if you don't have large classes behind it, there are going to be fewer juveniles in the future.
Okay. So it looks like long-term our population is looking good. It's just a matter of time before we have some of those move through the age or the size classes as far as being a fishable population.
Yeah, Chair Weber, Commissioner Aikenson. Yeah, I think that dashboard is a pretty accurate picture of what's going on. Yeah, the population is okay and it's not at risk. We're not concerned about it winking out. We have more fish in the lower Columbia, more sturgeon in the lower Columbia River than in all of the other sturgeon populations combined. So that's saying something. And there are really some very positive indicators here, but there are also some things that that aren't great. Those productivity issues are real, I believe, and so while we're doing okay, we're not doing gangbusters, and this is a population that had in the past been well in excess of 1 million fish. So.
Now we have some public comment. If you have questions that might help that move along, great.
Tucker, I think we're going to hear some of this. I've been asked questions about, and I think it's easy to talk to people about protecting small fish so we'll have big fish. This appears to me that we're protecting big fish because we don't have enough small fish, but not the mature ones. I mean, not the breeding size. It's in between. And I've had trouble explaining why not having any type of a limited fishery on this abundant size, legal size, is a clear conservation or rebuilding benefit. So if you, and I think we'll hear some coming in here, so I would like you to answer it now or wait till after public testimony when you come back and be prepared to help with that answer.
Sure, Chair Weber, Commissioner Professor, whichever you guys prefer, I'm happy to.
Want to hear the public testimony first? Well, I'm thinking that if this will answer some of the questions they're going to have, then now's a good time for them to hear it.
Okay, sure, Chair Weber, Commissioner Professor. Yeah, it's this dashboard is exactly the picture that we're struggling with, I think, as fisheries managers. There are many things that look really great here. There are many things that don't look that great. We have modeled out sort of what fisheries would do, and they all sort of, even very low level ones, sort of decrease the number of adults that we have in our population ultimately. When you're not recruiting enough juveniles in to the slot to replace the ones you might be taking out in the fisheries, it's going to have an impact. Now, we have a lot of fish in the sub-adult size range that are over legal, 23,000. So those fish are sort of, have escaped the fishery. They're going to recruit the adults. But ultimately, any fisheries we have now will have legacy effects. I think this is a lesson that we've learned the hard way. Right? Legacy effects with sturgeon fisheries are a real thing. They occur, and you don't necessarily see them when you do them. I believe some of what we're seeing right now is a legacy effect of fisheries from the 80s and 90s. So when it takes 20 years for those fish to get through and mature and spawn, you have to be very careful with the fisheries and the retention and the exploitation rates you have.
Great.
So, River, I can't predict if my questions are related to the public's questions or not, but at the risk that they are, I'd like to ask those. So first of all, Tucker, can you just briefly talk about your survey methods? Because my statistics are pretty rusty. I conceded that in the past. What I would call a 5% confidence interval is kind of minimal for any consideration of scientific rigor. We've got 95%. And so, how are you surveying this?
All right, sure. Chair Weber, Commissioner Woolley, we're doing a fisheries independent survey where we go out with a big, as big as we can afford marking effort in the spring. We focus our efforts or have in the past in the estuary. We catch as many sturgeon as we can down there using gill nets. We're short of tons of fish. We put as many marks in as we can. Last year we put about 5,000 marks out. We wait a little bit of time. We come back with our set lines. We stratify that effort throughout the lower river. Our areas are based on size, not river mile in the lower river, because a river mile, as you might imagine in Astoria, is not the same as a river mile in the gorge as far as the number of acres that are out there. So we stratify those out. We make as intensive pass as we can with the set lines. The set lines catch a very broad size range, so that gives us that length frequency picture. And then we use those marks in the basic marker capture to generate a population estimate. There is quite a bit of variability around the estimate, but I feel good about those methods. They're definitely step up. We definitely have a picture now that we didn't have in the past. The estimates are things that people like to jump on and they like to see, and they're, I don't know, this may sound sciencey, but they're glamorous, I guess. The real benefit of what we have here is that population size structure that we get with the set lines, and it gives us, you know, a real picture of what's happening overall with the population.
It sounds like so much is dependent on those numbers and you know, all the other inputs. So there just seems to be kind of a wide range in terms of that.
Chair Weber, Commissioner Willie, I'm the national really don't have to do that here, but I can also help him or answer that question if you'd like.
Sure.
So yeah, there's a wide range, but you know, we don't just look at that, we also look at the trends in those numbers. So there can be some variability within the estimates, sure, but if they tend to be doing the same thing, and we look, say for instance, on this year's estimate, which is quite large, larger than we predicted, but if you look at the sort of catch effort and the regressions, and you sort of try to tie that back, everything still points to increased population. Now, is that number 220,000? It's probably not exactly 220,000, but is it definitely up from last year? Yeah, I think that's a real increase.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Another question. So, on your two graphs with sea lion abundance and also and then predation, and there's obviously an inverse relationship between the abundance of sea lions and then that drop in sturgeon populations. So are you implying that, strongly implying that the correlation is implying causation? In other words, what are the factors that we're considering, you know, for the stellars? How much are you kind of weighing this on them versus other factors you talked about, legacy fishing, you know, it's long life history of sturgeon, period of overfishing, you know, related to the age classes that we have now and that sort of thing. So anyway, you can give a little context.
Chair Weber, Commissioner Woolley. Yeah, there are factors out there that could be impacting productivity. I think sort of the consensus out there right now is that, you know, this stellar sea lion predation might not be the only thing, but it is definitely a major thing. And it's not, as I said, just necessarily the predation itself. If they're altering the behavior, and as I said, our population trends are all up or stable, but the predation numbers have dropped dramatically despite an increase in the number of sea lions. That would seem to indicate that sturgeon maybe altered behaviors. We've, you know, anecdotally heard things about sturgeon being in the sandy and other shallow water areas where we don't expect to necessarily find them. These are, you know, people who've been fishing in these areas for years and years and years, and they hear about these things now. So it seems plausible that sturgeon behavior is altered. Now, whether there are other effects out there, you know, it could be power peaking load following at the hydro system. Is definitely can have a problem. You know, sturgeon are broadcast spawners. They don't build nests. Their eggs disperse. Their larvae disperse. They use littoral areas. If you think you're fine when you're in the water and then it drops 3 feet, well, and your fish, and you need water, then that can be a problem too. But the consensus sort of smoking gun out there, I think, right now is sea lions.
And one final question. So I know that your recommendation right now is to kind of stay back, based on current trends, and I'm just wondering if you could give our anglers and guides any kind of hopeful message. I'm probably hesitant to do that, but moving to the future, I think they're probably like to have some sense of what, based on stable and slightly upward trends now, what's the outlook?
Chair Weber, Commissioner Woolley. I don't know, by nature kind of a pessimistic guy. There are lots of, like I said, positive trends. There are lots. Not really, I'm actually an optimist who just happens to believe that his glass is always half empty. there are lots of positive trends out there. There are lots of things that are, as I said before, a little bit concerning. I think if we see several years or at least more than one of this, again, still steadily increasing legal abundance, that would be something that would really sort of, I think, put the fisheries managers at a little more confident footing.
Okay, well, we have,
I actually have
okay.
a question for Tucker. This is totally out of the blue, but Tucker, there appears to have been, I think you may have mentioned it, this shift. You mentioned the shallow water occurrences, and we've seen some pretty strange sturgeon behavior, in the shallow water at Rooster Rock, the balls of sturgeon up right below the dam. The sturgeon, you mentioned sturgeon in the Sandy, but we've also seen this shift of sturgeon in, at least in my opinion, into the Willamette. A pretty high abundance of sturgeon in the Willamette. And I'm wondering, have you guys looked at possible reasons why that might have occurred? And the one that I think of is the dramatic improvements over the last 10 years or so in the city of Portland's combined sewer overflow. And has that actually improved the water quality throughout the year enough that it's actually retaining and holding sturgeon? And then is your survey, are you comfortable that your survey is, that there's enough mixing going on in the population that your survey is not missing this component of fish that appear to be just resident in the Willamette now at pretty high abundance? If you go there, catch and release fishing in the Willamette is phenomenal almost year round.
Commissioner Weber, Director Melcher, I think I heard two at least questions there, so I'll try to get through them. Certainly, the Willamette is a much more hospitable place than it was, especially 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. The city of Portland's efforts with their big pipe project have really dramatically reduced the number of sort of storm discharge events in the Willamette. We haven't necessarily looked to see if that's a cause, and we're not doing a lot of water quality work within the Willamette. But definitely that's an increase. I think that our estimates, on that mixing front, it's a tricky thing right now, because sturgeon tend to move into the river in May and June. The southern, those are the ones that can access the ocean, right? And they stay there through sort of the fall, but then as you head into the winter, the component will move back out of the ocean. So it's an open population, but for a period of time it acts like a closed population, which allows us to use sort of these closed population metrics to measure them. So there is a balance between trying to allow full mixing and letting them move out of the system. I think our mixing is okay. We're trying to do more to stratify our marking efforts as well to help with that. I will say the Willamette is one of our sections where we do set line in each year, so it's definitely included in our efforts.
well, we have 3 people signed up for public comment, so you can trade with them, Tucker. And Tom Wolf, Butch Smith, Bill Hunsinger. Three minutes each, and Tom, you don't have to use every second.
Wow. That hurt. I'm not going to testify then. Okay, no, I am going to testify. Chair Weber, Commissioners, for the record, my name is Tom Wolf. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Council Trout Limited. I am here to just, even though technically sturgeon are not a salmon or trout species, they are a cold water species. Trout Limited does care about them, and we do have great concern about the white sturgeon population on the Columbia. It was nice to hear Tucker share that numbers are slightly up and are getting better, but there's still great concern. So we urge caution on in future decisions, that you continue to stay the course in your harvest matrix right now on sturgeon, and that you continue to voice caution. We support the conclusions reached by Tucker and ODFW staff, who incidentally we commend for the great job they've done. White sturgeon in the Columbia River are, from what I've been told, the best population in the world, and I think that it behooves us to continue to strive to protect that population, to bring it up to catchable numbers, so that someday we can extend the number of fish that people are allowed to harvest in the river and help out the recreational fishing industry and what they do, but not now. We urge caution. But in conclusion, I'd just like to move to a different subject, and I just want to commend all the commissioners for, frankly, for the way you've taken the crap that has been hurled on you lately concerning the decision that you reached on January 20th, even though the members of my organization opposed the decision that you made. I have nothing but respect for you. And on Wednesday, there was a rumor floating around that some of you were going to be asked to be resigned. And I went and, fortunately, that was just a rumor. I went and talked to a whole bunch of legislators and got them to protest to the governor. And I have nothing but respect for you. You've done a great job in all the things that you do. And I got to say that when I retire, I will never put my name in the ODFW Commission. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Tom. Butch?
Chairman Weber, Commission, Director Melcher, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Butch Smith. I'm president of the Elwalko Charter Association. I also am the chairman of the Salmon Advisory Subpanel to the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. I'm a member of the Columbia River Sport Advisory Group, and I'm a commissioner like Bill for the Port of Elwalko. And a few other things, and I don't want to take all the time up in doing that nonsense, but I'm here today to first commend the Oregon staff, sturgeon staff, as well as the Washington staff. I still feel they are some of the best in the United States at sturgeon management, and I thank Tucker for what he does in the Washington people. A few weeks ago, I went to a Washington Commission and testified, and as you know, last year they gave a big no right there. They decided to go ahead and let you listen to before they made a decision, let you listen to the testimony and the presentation by staff, which I think is the right decision. I testified to that effect. Here we are. When 2010. I was a proponent for closing it. You didn't see me here. You didn't see me at the Washington Commission begging and whining to open it up because I thought it was a need. And mind you, at that time we were fishing at 20 to 30 to 40%, and that was the wrong thing to do. I do believe at a 30-year high in the keeper size limit, we do have an opportunity to fish on sturgeon. Probably different than what we are normally used to seeing. There was a season modeled out by Guy Norman, who's retired last year, that was a little bit different on how we run things, and it was really a pencil width difference between how the sturgeon rate grew in the keeper to just and how it would if you had a fisheries like we're proposing. I would like this commission to recommend, to give the authority to the director, that they maybe continue talks on this topic, to maybe bring back a fisheries that's modeled out, that you can see here what the exact effects would do. I have some ideas, they have some ideas, and that way we can make a decision, because as a port commissioner, all our fisheries count, commercial, sport, and we need all to make our communities whole. And right now we've got a big hole that is probably going to happen in the Gillnet, and then we got another big hole that's happening with the towns of Hammond, Astoria, and Elwalko and Chinook. And I have members on both sides of the river. So I'm asking you to not rush this decision. We've come back, have the staff come back in March, work with the Washington staff and see if we can craft a decision, and therefore you can see what the effects it might or might not have and give it a thumbs up or thumbs down at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill. Chairman Weber, before I start, if you have some questions on sea lions after this, I'd like to explain it, because I've been doing a big study since we're the poster child in that story.
I'll take you up on that one.
Okay. Anyway, I just want to bring the attention to one thing. All the data that you receive on these boards, from smelt, spring salmon, summer salmon, fall salmon, sturgeon, where do you get your information from in your data? Commercial that. But the other thing that I wanted to say about sturgeon is I've been fishing sturgeon since 1963. And I understand exactly what the biologist had told you. These sturgeon that need to be protected are your home guards, the ones that are in this spawning area and up. In fact, below Bonneville Dam, your pod of 70,000 sturgeon that was there is totally gone, and they say they don't see the predation by sea lions. Well, the pod's gone. They've eaten the pod. Those sturgeon are smart. They move. And if you scratch their bellies, they'll leave. But the other thing that I got to tell you is, the only way that I could see a possibility of a sports fishery, in my opinion, that's well monitored, is those sturgeon that come from the ocean that are test fished with a gill net in the lower Columbia River from Rice Island down. That's where you're finding these legal sturgeon. So if you took a straight line from the top of Rice Island straight across from Washington to Oregon, one fish only, if you were looking at something like this, and make it mandatory that you deliver in a Waco or Chinook, or the John Day boat ramp, East End Basin, Hammond, or Warrenton, then you could look at it with 6 observers in 6 places until you find a quota that works for you, and make it mandatory that you turn in your numbers by catch if you were looking at targeting some of this ocean-going sturgeon that comes into the Columbia River. And I think everybody would agree to that if you were looking at something like that. That way you wouldn't touch the other 87 miles of river and your spawning grounds. And I think if you ever looked at something, that'd be a great idea. Predation, I live on the river. It's not just a stellar that eats a sturgeon. All those seals, the California sea lions eat them. And the reason that the sturgeon come into Columbia is when the anchovies come into the Columbia and salt water pushes them up to Rice Island and backs it down, that's when they come in. They feed on that. Some of them continue on up because there isn't that abundance of anchovies or smelt to eat. They feed on clams. If you open up a sturgeon, he'll have a lot of clams in him after those are gone. So anyway, what I'd like to say is, I'm an environmentalist too. I fish sturgeon. But if you wanted to help out the sports and the guide boats, and you wanted to take a small percentage, you set a quota, and once you reach that quota, sorry boys, we're done. But only 1 fish per person, if you were looking at some way to appease everybody. So anyway, gentlemen, once again, I appreciate the time. And if you want to ask me a quick question on sea lions, I'll answer it for you if you ask it.
Are there any questions?
I think I'll just talk to you later when I have more time.
I gotta go home.
Well,
Can I say it really quick?
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I've been working on this for a long time. We're the poster child for sea lions. And because of our mooring basin is completely full, the Rainier's dock is completely full of sea lions also. And these numbers increase, because there's no food left down in California, that the abundance of food for them is up here now in the Northwest. But the permits we have that take a certain percent away doesn't match the percent of them that's coming back now because we've got tests in the East Mooring Basin of as much as a 20% increase in a year. It used to vary from 8 to 10. Now, if you look at those numbers, it's 20%. The permit he's got that you take away some of them or get rid of them doesn't match what's there now. So you're constantly taken away from the salmon and sturgeon fisheries because they're going to keep eating. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the commission's time also. I know you're tired of us.
Oh, wait, can't leave yet. Bruce has a question.
Yeah, Butch, I would be very interested in seeing what you guys have come up with and how it could be applied to our working with Tucker and staff. So if we could make that happen, I would ask you a question if you have considered catching a legal, if we did have a legal sturgeon retention about racking rod.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
I think the sturgeon fishing community would do anything it would to get retaining. If I may, Mr. Chairman, an idea would be shrink the size of the slot limit down to 4 to 5 inches. Instead of the 13% harvest rate that the Oregon plan calls for, no more than 7 to 8%. And I think, and let Tucker and staff pick the slot limit where the most healthiest was within that population, the keeper population. There was almost a fist fight that broke out between staff at a Columbia River Sport Advisory meeting. If not 230,000, when will we ever harvest? I mean, we're talking a 30-year high in that population. So I think there's ways to do it scientifically, conservation. There's no more bigger person that wants to keep conservation in mind on the sturgeon, but there is a way to have some harvestable rate where we get anglers back down to where we need them.
I would like to see the numbers on that, and would like to see it coming from staff. So if Kurt, if you could make that happen and come back to us if the other commissioners feel the same way or similar, then I'd certainly be interested in exploring those options.
I do. I agree.
Laura.
Butch, if you're so inclined to stay through our break, which I'm not sure when that's coming, I just was hoping that you'd stick around. I wanted to talk to you about the 1% conservation set aside, and I know that's not part of this topic, but I hope that you can stay through break. Maybe other commissioners or staff could join on that, because it's not part of this agenda item, so we can't discuss it here. But.
No, Ms. Anderson, I'll be glad to do that.
Okay. Thank you, panel.
Thank you.
Yes,
Can I testify? I showed up a little late. Traffic was bad. On behalf of this.
Come on up. Get to the point. We'll consider it.
Chair Weber, Commissioner. My name is Robert Moxley. I'm a Columbia River advisor. Donated my time and dime for the last 7 years, to try to make a difference as a recreational angler. I find it ironic that the ODFW staff is not recommending a retention season on the sturgeon, but yet we have one up in the bottom of the pool. That's the fish that I think would need protection the most. I see no reason why we don't have a small retention season down in the estuary. There's plenty of fish coming and going from the ocean. We've had a decline in angler effort down there, 90%? That's unacceptable. People are finding other things to do. They're going to lose interest. I don't agree with that whatsoever. Do what we got to do. I mean, reduce the slot limit. Rack your rod. Let's figure something out. Let's get these people back out on the water. Let's get participation up. Maybe make it 2-inch, 4-inch. I don't know. Look at spring Chinook. March. What is there? 80,000 angler trips for 10 fish. I mean, because the lure of retention is there, so people will go. Recreation anglers are arrogant. They think they're going to be the one that catches everything that's, not really there. So I don't understand why we don't give them a little bit of incentive to participate. Sturgeon are hardy. The catch and release, the release mortality aspect of it is extremely low. I mean, so basically, essentially, if we do reduce the slot limit, give an opportunity in the estuary only, then I think people will show up. And, we'll have, one of my goals would be to increase recreational opportunity and effort. And that's something else I want to point out. My wife and I just bought our license and tags in Oregon. No shellfish license, just the license and tags. $214.51. That includes tags. Tags are for retention. Quit taking my retention away and raising the price. Summer Chinook is a big problem. We didn't even use 50% of the quota, the sports quota in the lower river. We're asking for more and we're not even using what we have. And we have an escapement of hatchery fish that is exceeding the federal limits on that summer Chinook because the participation's not there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Tucker.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Weber. Tucker, I just wanted to have you, it was not part of your presentation here, but I wanted you to have you recap for the Commission just what the current sturgeon season structure is. Obviously, there isn't much structure, it's catch release, but and what is the process and timeline? Is there some, do we have something on the future agenda where we were going to be looking at potential season alternatives for 2017, or I guess from your perspective, how does that lay out?
Chair Weber, Director Melcher, I don't believe there's anything on any future commission agendas looking at 2017 sturgeon fisheries at this time. If directed, we can definitely look at that sort of thing.
So right now, sorry if I can follow up, the season's set under permit regulations, and it's set based on the sturgeon conservation plan that we have in place. And barring changes to the red light, green light, yellow light in future years, as that changed, you would then come back to the Commission to adopt the season or not?
Yeah, Chair Weber, Director Melcher. When those changes, we would definitely consider. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of fish out there right now. I'm sensitive to the concerns of some of the people we've heard. It's the mix of signals that sort of has us bollocksed up a little bit right now. I guess in sort of previous season structures, and right now it's under permanent rule, I think. So it's closed to retention fisheries for both sport and commercial. It's open year-round for catch and release for most of the area. There are sturgeon sanctuaries in the Willamette from the falls downstream to the railroad bridge at Lake Oswego, and in the Columbia River from Bonneville Dam downstream to Rooster Rock. Those run from, I believe, May 1 through August 31, where there's no catch and release, even fishing. Again, designed to protect those adult fish. Typical season structure would have in the past, I think, involved more strict first for the open fisheries. Had to be a little careful on the Willamette, as you mentioned. A lot of fish in there these days. People, a lot of people live in Portland, as it turns out. So easy access to a large population, so you can run through the sort of bifurcated quotas. I guess in the past, they've sort of allocated a certain number of the retention to fisheries downstream of River Mile 40, the water power lines is sort of in the demarker, and then a certain allocation upstream of that as well. So you can run through those guidelines pretty quick. In the estuary, They closed those fisheries then for a while and then opened them up, I think, Mother's Day weekend with an idea that they were hoping to get through 4th of July. I think it struggled to get there that far with the limited guidelines, you know, that we operated under at the end, sort of the retention stuff. It would take some figuring out what people we want to look at. I heard people talking about just an estuary-only fishery. Certainly, if that was the direction, we could look at that. I would say that there are, you know, active angling communities with people who fish on the Willamette and people who fish in the Maidstone River up here who might view that as inequitable.
You know, thanks, and I wanted to follow up on that. I believe that the river section specific allocations are actually adopted in rules, right? Isn't that part of the?
I don't
remember either. So I guess
you would have to investigate that.
Do you have do you have something coming up with Washington, where Washington is proposing some 2017 season?
Chair Weber, Director Melcher, I believe Washington didn't take any action there, and we'll wait and see mode, but I have not heard of anything where they're talking about proposing any seasons yet.
Any other questions of Tucker? Bruce?
Yes, one comment, Tucker. We didn't have a major problem suggesting to the commercial fleet that they trailer up to zones 4 and 5 under the auspices of protecting, under conservation, protecting those tules. So I personally, and that costs the community, Lower River communities money. So the idea of at least exploring the possibility of saying, I agree there'd be angst, but moving, suggesting that things trailer down to zones 1 and 2 or 1, wherever you would decide. I'm not as leery of doing that, knowing full well that there would be wailing and gnashing of teeth. But we've got a precedent for doing it.
Certainly, Chair Weber, Commissioner Buckmaster, I just felt like it was my responsibility to make sure you guys were aware of that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tucker. Looks like it's 10:15. You want to take a break? Yes. Okay. 15 minutes. Be back at 10:30. Regarding the Blue Ribbon panel, Roger.
Chair Weber, Commissioners, Director Melcher, you've been briefed on this item a number of times, either in director's reports or other forums. I have presentation ready, but in the interest of time, if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I can go ahead and do the presentation. I'm already planning for some.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, we had one person, Tom Wolf, signed up. Tom, did you wish to exercise your rights under signing up?
No, I'm perfectly good. I'll break 1,000 testifying down in the legislature, so we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, my only request is that in this resolution, there is a potential that legislation could be introduced at the federal level while we're in the process of getting the letter ready for you to submit, to send in. Should that happen, I would like the permission to make some slight modifications to the resolution in order to reflect a new bill number or whatever happens. Other than that, go ahead.
Okay, I would take a motion with that proviso.
I move to approve the draft resolution supporting the Association of Fish and Wildlife Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations on sustaining America's diverse fish and wildlife resources and encouraging the Oregon Congressional Delegation to support legislation to implement the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations. And further would like to authorize ODFW to make minor modifications to to that letter to make it relevant if we do see some changes in the federal policies.
Second by Commissioner Buckfast. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Very, very efficient.
I was going to mention, I think Rob did just set the record for the fastest presentation and the official action.
I think that's true.
So,
Isaac, we're to Exhibit E.
Morning, Chair Weber, members of the Commission. Director Miller. I'm Isaac Sanders, Access and Habitat Coordinator, and Roger's whirlwind presentation is stripped up Craig. Eli will be here in a minute. He had probably had a minute more.
Sorry.
So I'm here today to take an opportunity to quickly kind of run over a few of the highlights from our new biennial report and outline the process that we're going to embark on to come up with some priorities for spending AMH funds. So as I mentioned, here's our new biennial report. It's a refreshed format. We put it in color, tried to kind of bring it into the modern age a little bit. Want to point out that these are projected numbers through the end of the biennium. So these numbers are, all the financial numbers I'm going to talk here are projections through June of this year. We're projected to bring in a little less than $2.7 million. The revenue is, the majority of that is from a $4 surcharge on hunting and combination licenses. The next big chunk is from the annual auction of our tags, some of which you heard about earlier from Mr. Bender. The raffle brings in another chunk of money, and then we have more license dollars that's directed into green and deer forage funds. We're projected to spend most of what we brought in over the biennium. The vast majority of that is on actual project grants and with some overhead in there. And finally, the reserve account balance, the dedicated AMH reserve, is projected to be a little over $1 million at the end of the biennium. And that's about 1 year's expenses, as you can see, maybe a little bit less. We have about 1 year cash reserve on hand to fund the project. I would also note that the auction revenue is about $100,000, last year about $100,000 more than our 5-year average, so did pretty well last year on that. That keeps going, that will be really useful for us. Just kind of moving on, this is a review for most of you, but the Access and Habitat Board is appointed by you guys to provide recommendations on AMH funding. It's an all-volunteer board. It's a mix of landowners and hunter representatives with a chair. They're available to 2 consecutive 4-year appointments. And currently we have a vacancy on the board of a landowner representative. When Craig was appointed to the chair, that created a vacancy. We have the recruitment out. We only received 2 applications for it, and the statute requires us to have 5. These come through Department of Agriculture or Department of Forestry. So we're going to reopen the recruitment and with a target of trying to have somebody for the June commission meeting to get those 5 candidates together so we can get somebody behind the board. If anybody knows anybody who might be a good candidate, please encourage them to submit an application, get a hold of me, get a hold of the regional counselor. And speaking of regional councils, the board then, after they're appointed, they get to appoint, or they're tasked with appointing people to our regional councils. You can see we have 6 regions here in the state. The council membership is very similar. It is exactly the same as the board: 3 landowners, 3 hunters, and the Chair. Those don't need to go through anybody in particular. They come through us, and then the board makes those appointments. Looking at the map, we have a pretty good geographic distribution, and these regional councils are really, really important to us. They help provide that local input on projects and really help. All the projects have to come up through the regional council. They vote on it. Those recommendations go to the board. The board then makes their decision and brings it on up to you guys, or I bring it up to you for approval. And again, we currently have positions in all but the positions open in all but the Northeast Council. I believe they're mostly all landowners, but I think we have a chair position open also in Mount Airy County. So again, if you know anybody who might be a good fit for one of our regional councils, let them know there's an opportunity. Kind of moving on quickly through it. Recently, I've tried to kind of rebrand a couple of our really big projects as enhanced law enforcement patrol, just to try to describe what we're doing here. These enhanced patrols currently provide the majority of the access that the program provides. As you can see, it's about 3.5 million acres. Most of that is probably within an hour's drive of most of our major population centers, so we get a lot of use out of these. The cost is very reasonable. It's our best deal in terms of cost per acre, I guess, if you will, with the additional bonus of extra law enforcement. These, particularly the state police patrols, these are additional patrols. So we're bringing extra enforcement to the field. This is above and beyond the normally funded Fish and Wildlife patrols. The other thing is these really help address one of the big issues that our landowners face when opening their property to the public. The real big issues that we hear consistently are dumping, vandalism, damage to roads that are either native surface roads or whatever that are closed, and ATV use, some other things. The enhanced patrols really help ameliorate that. Green Diamond area down south is very, very happy with the project. They're very satisfied with the reduction in dumping and damage that they saw on their property. And that's 600,000 acres of private timberland just kept open to the public because of our project. Also like to highlight a couple of the other kind of enhanced patrol projects that we have that we participate in. The Lincoln County Forest Patrol. We're just a partner in this one. This is really led and started by the local landowners and the Waste Management Authority to help deal with the dumping that just seems prevalent in Lincoln County. It's been around as long as we have. It's the Access and Habitat Program, and you can see we are a significant partner, but we're really only funding 20% of this project. The majority of it is funded by the landowners whose property is patrolled by this forest deputy. And we have a similar one with Lynn County. Same deal. Both of these open around a little over 300,000 acres or so of access, most of it all timber property. Again, really great projects. And I partly brought up these local too because the last two, because they're another mechanism for communities to be involved. In both of these, the county is contributing mostly through providing the vehicle and support for the deputy and whatnot, but that's one way that they're able to contribute to these really important projects to keep a lot of property open. Moving on to our other style of access that we do, call them access areas. These, again, about 1 million acres of access is provided with this. Most of them are on the east side of the state. The vast majority of them are a straight fee access. We pay them so much an acre. It's about $2 an acre on average of what we pay for these projects for access. And the projects usually range 3 to 5 years in length. They're from hundreds to several thousand to, as I'm sure you guys are well aware of, our most recent access area, the Hancock Forest Management one, which is 250,000 acres. These access areas also provide another tool for trying to deal with some of the damage issues that landowners might face. They're often directed to the Access and Habitat program as a potential, see if it'll match up for them as a way to help damage issues that districts have. Moving on to our next, basic projects is we have habitat projects. Along with our partners, there's about 40,000 acres of habitat work. We directly funded at least 9,000 acres. Some of that has yet to come this spring. I know there's more work on Rivers Creek area. There's some stuff down in Southern Oregon, Road Meadows. There's a few more projects that are yet to come this biennium. And when I come next in front of you, I'm going to have 3 habitat projects and an access project. So more coming. And the other thing with the habitat projects is some of them just don't translate well into a per acre basis. We have this tendency to record everything in a per acre basis. And certain projects like spring developments, road decommissionings, other things like that are a little bit more difficult to put into a metric of so much per acre. That said, the habitat projects are considerably more expensive than our access projects. I mean, here I have $10 an acre statewide. That's just what we're contributing to these access projects. The real cost per acre is $4 or $5 an acre for maybe some fertilization stuff, to well over $500 an acre for juniper treatments if you're doing the full cut, stack, pile, burn treatment type stuff like that. So the numbers are pretty wide. But most of these habitat projects, the benefits extend well beyond our accounting period. In fact, some of them really, the really big benefits might not happen until year 6, 7, and we're no longer carrying them necessarily on our books as a project or habitat acres that are continuing to go forward. Getting to kind of challenges, maybe opportunities, however you want to look at it. Finding a mix, a balance with our projects. Our authorizing statute, let's see here, directs the board to recommend a mix of projects to provide a balance between access and habitat benefits. But it also directs the board to implement projects by volunteers, programs that minimize economic losses to landowners, encourage damage control hunts, and projects with matching funds. So obviously there's more to it than just a straight access and habitat kind of a measure. We know from a number of surveys, I know you guys have seen them all, that access is consistently cited as a very important aspect for our users. And one of the things that I realized looking at it is that access was cited second only to safety, cost, availability of animals, complex regulations, and not enough time. For the most part, access is one of the levers that we actually can influence. It's difficult to find people more time, compete with other issues. The cost, if you look at a lot of that, it's not so much the cost of our licenses, it's the cost of travel, it's other things like that. So access is actually something that we can directly influence and try to address on these priorities. And as I mentioned earlier, habitat projects cost substantially more, so if we were just trying to do an even money approach, we would probably have to reduce or lose some of the access that we currently are able to provide. Some of the other challenges that, again, I'm sure everybody's well aware is changes in ownership and management of our industrial timberlands. There's been a transition to charging for access. It's common in most of the rest of the U.S. It's sort of new to the Northwest, so I think people are adjusting there. As well as some of these owners may not be as familiar with the long history that Oregon has. A lot of the timberland has traditionally been open for the public, and as that starts to change, there's some struggles there. Yeah. All right. Well, then, in being faced with these, and it's not really new. We've always struggled to be able to compete with, say, private industry for providing access or paying a landowner a similar amount. But it definitely drives us to look at coming up with some priorities for how we spend or how we make recommendations to spend the money from the A&H funds. There's really two major components that I think you need to look at when we go through this. There's biological question. So what are their habitat needs? Is there something limiting the populations? What is holding them back? And then there's the social aspect of it. There's needs of the landowners and hunters. I mean, the motto of Access and Habitat is landowners and hunters together for wildlife. So we really need to bring those together. So our plan is to identify priorities in each of those 6 regions, or 5 regions as I talked about earlier. Again, we're going to talk to the biologists, local biologists, whatnot. Again, what's holding back, what do we need to do, what aren't we doing, are there areas that we're missing? We're going to use those regional councils, as I mentioned, their input on the local level. Maybe they can help us identify areas that we should be focusing on, areas to go after getting access or doing habitat. And also just to help truth the stuff, make sure that, maybe in this council, this area, access isn't as important. They have plenty of access and they're far more worried about habitat or something else. So that'll help us kind of work through that. State's diverse enough, I don't know that we can really come up with a statewide mix. Regions is really the way to go. Obviously, input from hunters, a lot of that we already have, as I alluded to with a lot of the various studies, and I know a lot of us hear directly from them. Then we're going to, after we get this done, we're going to bring it to the board, and the Access and Habitat Board will then kind of kick it around, and we're going to come up with a list of 5 regions, and we'll come back to you guys and present that to the commission on what we have determined with those out of that priorities. And I'm more than happy to ask any questions. We have Craig here as well. I know he would like to add a point or two.
Sure. Director Melcher, Vice Chair Weber, members of the commission, for the record, Craig Yee, I apologize for being late. I thought the previous program would take a little longer.
Yeah, I think you were thinking of a record.
Yeah, it was quite quick. Per Isaac's discussion on opportunities and challenges, I've been involved in the Access and Habitat program since its existence in 1993. In the last 24 years, I've seen significant changes in how we approach access and approach habitat and implementation of this program. I guess what I would say that my vision for this program is that we need to take a harder look at how we fund our access, because you guys struggled, and so did we, with the whole Hancock issue, and I think we're going to see some more of that in the future. And how do we match up the needs of what Oregonians want with the needs of the landowners? I think that's a very important point, because this program is really important for these hunters to gain access to some of this property. I think for the future in April, we're probably going to start initiating our discussions. July, I'm going to ask that Isaac advertise at least a 2-day meeting. If we get some of our publics involved and engaged in it, that would be great. But to have a discussion with the regional coordinators, Isaac, staff, the board, and begin to bring some ideas forward. Many of you are probably aware of access programs in some other states, ranching for wildlife, block management, and there's others out there. I've asked Isaac to gather those up so we can take a look at those. We need to bring the statutes from Oregon and some of those ideas maybe together and look at some other different opportunities. So that's, if you have any questions for me, I'm sure Isaac can answer them. Bruce.
Thank you, both of you. I feel that the leadership of both staff and the volunteer base are in good hands. I do have one question. Looking at the financials, and then reading through on the open fields monies that I know for a large portion of what we spend on the Hancock access. Are the open fields monies reflected in the biennium report financial?
No, this is only the access and habitat side.
are open fields money spent by any other entity, any other group, any other, so they are clearly monies for the Access and Habitat Board and staff.
Yeah, Commissioner Buckmaster.
Then let's figure out a way to have a report that actually is truly transparent, that has all the monies that are under your care reflected when you're reporting to us. And that's going to make it easier and for us to answer questions if we're asked. And in the long run, I think it will be easier for you as well.
Great.
So just to clarify on your acreages, it's 9,000 acres this past year, and then 40% 40,000 number. That's the total aggregate for the entire program since its inception.
No, the total since its inception is about 1.6 million habitat directly approved. On page 4, I guess, of the report, there's some summaries. So we have it during the biennium, and then active projects. We approved new projects during the biennium. We had a number of projects that are active through the biennium, and then that final number there is the total over the program.
Yeah, I'm just asking about the habitat acres. So what I'm looking at with my rough math, 4.5 million acres of access, 9,000 acres of new habitat work. That's 0.002% of the total number of acres that have the habitat work on them. And so I'm a big advocate for improving wildlife habitat, and I would like to see a percentage of habitat work be required for the access acres. You know, in other words, a requirement of the landowner to build that in. I'm not sure how that would work, but I think that should be, it's the landowner benefits, and it's kind of a privilege to receive our funding, and so I think that they should be required to do some type of habitat work if the land isn't equal to it. Not, of course, not every site is equal to that, but that's just a suggestion of mine. And then secondly, this is something I mentioned before in terms of this is more of a staff issue or recommendation, the composition of the boards and the councils. I would like to see someone with a restoration ecology background, either as a board position or regional councils, and I know those are councils that are geographically based, but we're talking about habitat improvement. It would require a different kind of outreach. It would require either reaching out to academia or private consulting firms for that type of position to be on the board. But I think that kind of expertise would help in terms of how funding gets allocated and recommended for restoration work. That's what I was thinking.
Right. Chair Weber, Commissioner Woolley, there are some specific requirements in the statute about areas of representation. So I don't disagree with your reflection on your comment, but in terms of recruitment, but there would be some things you'd have to make sure that we still stay consistent with that statute. And I'm sure you can find somebody that reflects those kinds of values.
And I understand this is the statute, this is the structure that exists now. It would require, some type of agenda or something. But anyway, that's just an interest of mine that I wanted to state. So thanks.
Commissioner Woolley, also I omitted when I talked about the regional councils that each one of those regional councils has a ODFW coordinator, and those are, I think that almost all of them are habitat biologists. So they are ODFW habitat biologists for the area. Is the regional council leader, these are regional coordinators, and projects do go through them. So that's So they are providing, you know, some habitat and biological, ecological, you know, perspective on it. But, you know, I absolutely agree. I think we need to do more, and that's hopefully what our prioritization will help do as well, is help try to identify what are those habitat needs that we are perhaps not addressing or could address, and then try to figure out can we do it. You know, because there are some limits on, you know, where we can spend money, and we generally want access, and that sometimes creates difficulty.
Laura.
Chair Weber, thank you both, and thank you, Craig, for all the time, 35 years. I think you said that you've been working on access and habitat yesterday when we spoke, so I appreciate the perspective that you bring. And I just want to reiterate that I think this is important to go out and talk to the base and help me understand where you know, the real relevance of the program is, given that land ownership patterns have changed a lot since the program first began. And I guess my only perhaps direction, if I may, is to articulate, it would be most helpful for me as a commissioner to, perhaps this is echoing Commissioner Woolley's concerns, to have some actual metrics on priorities. So rather than just listing priorities, but it would be helpful if I had an understanding of what's considered percentage of acreage and or dollars for access versus habitat, or should there be caps on single projects for a single landowner, or do we have a objective of reaching a variety of sized landowners. And I say all of that, of course, because we do have consolidation of land ownership, and that can dominate a budget. So, and with that, I would just leave you with that from me, and thank you for taking the time to revisit this issue. I am going to excuse myself temporarily for a brief meeting that is kind of opportune at the moment with Commissioner Aikenson. So I'm going to excuse myself, and I would just say that if I'm unable to return prior to the next commission item, which is a voting item, for the record, I would support the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't think it's a question, but more of a comment. Over time, we've seen this shift from the landowners going from hunter access to fee access, which over a long term, I've always looked at the Access and Habitat program almost encouraging people to deny access so they can get paid for it, which is kind of it just creates a problem, and I don't know, obviously we're going to run out of money long before we can make all the landowners happy, and I don't know if there's anything that we can do about that, or if that's a problem that you guys see. But it seems to me that's kind of where we're headed.
Commissioner Weber, I don't know, most of my conversations with landowners have been, you know, they were interested in maybe some habitat work on the property. And I says, well, you know, we'd like to see some access, and that's the end of the conversation. So, I mean, they're just not, even when I said, well, we can do by permission, limited, you can control, talk to people before they go out there, and some of them are just, they're just not interested. So I don't know what to say there. Some of the people who come forward to us already have a lot of people using the property. They're completely surrounded by BLM property, and they just, maybe you can't even join them. So I don't know. I know that we struggle to compete with private industry and what we can offer for access to a property, considering some of the outfitters and guys may be able to offer what we are going to pay and only have a couple of people on the property rather than anybody who feels like coming out that day. So There's some challenges with the program in finding access and habitat areas with the public access.
Just Chair Weber, an additional comment. I've always, my view of this program has been, we never could compete with private industry. I mean, they will always pay more than the state will. And so what else can we bring to the table that would enhance somebody or encourage somebody to participate? It was for many years, and there's some things going on legislatively, release from liability was one thing that we brought in. I guess there's a new bill in the legislature to address that issue. And so we never could compete. I think you're spot on with regard to it's morphed into more of a fee thing. Exactly the reason why I want to take a look at what we're trying to do here and engage the folks that really are putting the programs on the ground, and that's the regional coordinators, see what they have, and again, look at what's going on in some other states. And just one other comment, Commissioner Buckmaster, I'll visit with Isaac, but I think we'll be back in front of you guys in March with some project approvals, and we could certainly flesh out the open fields money and tell you exactly where it's going.
I don't care how you account it, there you may have rules on how you do it, but I think in the package, it's monies that you need to report on. I have one more. I would love to have I hear talk about what percentage of Oregon is public lands, either federal, state, and then we look at private hunting lands, but having a high altitude number look at what's out there. What is our inventory of access in Oregon? And I know it's a simple question with probably a hard answer, but is that it?
That's the map up there is also on the back of the report.
Okay.
The light kind of tan colored is federal and state lands. So that's basically open for the most part. The stuff in the kind of turquoise blue are the enhanced patrols we were talking about, and as you can see, a lot of those are close to big population areas on the west side of the state. Green Diamond down there in Deschutes is another one. Those magenta areas, mostly in the northeast, are the access areas. And so you can certainly see there are areas where there is access lacking, where you see the white patches and there's nothing else. Now, I will say this is not all of the areas. There's some wildlife areas. There are some other ownerships that aren't. This is really just A&H projects. We have an Oregon hunting map, which is actually talked about in the report there as well. That one is our attempt to show all of the various hunting opportunities, whether they're ours or not. There's stuff on ODFW property. There's some other things that aren't reflected on this map as well. But we did put this together to try to help kind of provide at least a visual cue for that about where these areas are, to show that there isn't very much in the Mount Council, but most of that is public property. But we do have some access areas out there as well. So.
Thanks, this pretty well answers. I can cut that out and take it with that.
Anything further? There's no public comment, so thank you, actually. Tim.
Chair Weber, Commissioners, Director Melcher, for the record, my name is Tim Walters. I'm the Umpqua Watershed District Manager for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife based at Roseburg, and I'm here today to discuss the proposed acquisition of the Wheeler 2 property at the Cocoa Valley Wildlife Area. What I'd like to do today is discuss the background of the wildlife area itself and the proposed acquisition and the potential benefits to wildlife habitat and recreation. The Coquille Valley Wildlife Area is located on the lower Coquille River near the town of Coquille, slightly north and west of the town. The management plan for the wildlife area was adopted in April of 2016. And the current ownership will protect or enhance over 580 acres of wetland, upland, and tidally influenced lands. And it has the capability of providing high-quality habitats where tidal connectivity can be restored. And that's proposed on a portion in the southern portion of the wildlife area. Although new parcels were added in 2014 and 2015, right then in that area, there were still challenges related to public access for the Winter Lake Tract, and so it remains closed at this time. Those challenges were that narrow property band, as you can see between, right there, and we needed to do some improvements to the berms that were going to be used by recreationists to access that southern portion of the property. Those include berm improvements and bridge construction, and those things are scheduled to occur this summer. The proposed land acquisition will consolidate the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area ownership through addition of over 95 acres through donation from the Nature Conservancy. What this will do is improve public access, provide outdoor recreation opportunities, and provide an opportunity to improve the production of waterfowl, coho, salmon, and habitat for a variety of conservation strategy species. Once the Wheeler 2 tract is required and proposed access improvements are completed, the Winter Lake tract will be open to public access. The Wheeler 2 property will be managed under a separate set of tide gates from the Winter Lake property, and it will be operated under that separate set of tide gates along with some other landowners. As such, in the summer, there will be limited tidal exchange, primarily to provide water for cattle and some irrigation. In the winter, more water will be allowed on the properties as described in the Beaver Slough Drainage District's water management plan. This will lead to improved coho production as well as waterfowl production while maintaining agricultural production in the summer, and will be operating under a working landscapes model which has been described on a website called Coquille Working Landscapes that describes the projects and the partners that have been involved in the development of this whole project. We propose to manage the Wheeler 2 property with continued cattle grazing in the summer as a management tool. This is a view from north to south on a portion of the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area, looking at the wildlife area and some adjacent lands. And what I'd like to do is show the general layout of the pieces of property that we're discussing today, and how it will improve connectivity between the parcels. This is the general outline of the Winter Lake tract, which at this point is closed to public access. This is the Luckman piece, which was obtained in 2014 and connected to the Beaver Slough tract, which is off the map here, but to the north. Then in 2015, we obtained a small slice of property to allow legal access between these two disjunct pieces of property. But it was very narrow and could lead to some confusion for recreational users. The piece that we're talking about today is the Wheeler 2 tract, and you can see how it blocks up ownership, and I think will lead to less confusion for recreational users. And great recreational opportunity there also. In addition, the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area Management Plan, which was subject to extensive public review, notes that land adjustments would allow for the sale, trade, or exchange of land with willing landowners to enable ODFW to consolidate Coquille Valley Wildlife Area boundaries. The Nature Conservancy has secured funds through private donations to purchase the property and has entered into a purchase and sale agreement. They have also facilitated and funded the due diligence requirements and the Nature Conservancy will deposit the required funds to complete the land purchase and simultaneously assign the purchase and sale agreement to ODFW. Fee title will transfer from Wheeler directly to ODFW. The cost of the Wheeler 2 property, together with all the due diligence expenses, will be received by ODFW as a generous donation from the Nature Conservancy. This proposed land acquisition also has some relevance to ODFW plans and strategies. The Oregon Conservation Strategy lists conservation area opportunity 45, opportunity area 45 as the Lower Coquille River, and this property is included in that area. And key habitats that are listed for that conservation opportunity area are estuaries and wetlands, and we encompass both of those with this proposed property. In addition, over 20 coast range strategy species from the conservation strategy either occur or are likely to occur on the property. And finally, we will be, through the improvement in tidal cycles on the property and implementing the working landscapes model in the Beaverton Drainage District Water Management Plan, will help address limiting factors of stream complexity and water quality that are identified in the Oregon Coast Coastal Conservation Plan. Many species of wildlife will benefit from the project. You see these, and we've mentioned them as we've talked about the wildlife area in the past. Neotropical migrants, which are up here on this slide, are things like warblers, flycatchers, and various songbirds. We will also, through improved winter access and rearing habitat for juvenile coho salmon, this should result in a substantial increase of returning adult coho salmon to the Coquille Basin. This project expands benefits to all Oregonians in the form of additional opportunities for hunting, wildlife viewing, and public access to state lands. Indirect benefits to the economy include hunters and wildlife viewers, eating in local restaurants, staying in local hotels, shopping in local stores, and buying equipment or parts at local vendors. Direct economic benefits include continuing the payment of in lieu of taxes to Coos County pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute, continuing to pay fire protection assessments and drainage district assessments also. Are there any questions?
Great.
So Tim, were there any major issues or concerns with adjacent private property owners during the acquisition process, and if so, how were those resolved?
The primary issues that have been raised by landowners in relation to the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area have been related to the overall operation of the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area, and they involve concerns over potential impacts of the restoration plans and water management plans on adjacent landowners' ability to continue to farm the way they wish to, potential impacts of recreational users from trespass and that kind of thing. And we essentially feel like the consolidating the boundaries and not having a narrow strip of property that provides access actually improves the ability of recreational users to know where they're at and not to trespass. We have had some discussions with an adjacent landowner to the east of the project regarding a fence that's in the wrong location and has to be moved. And most of those discussions have occurred from as the Nature Conservancy has been negotiating this deal. And my understanding is that that landowner is very supportive of the project. But I will defer to them if they wish to address that.
I know we've had some issues in the past with acquisitions and some of that infrastructure in terms of signage, boundaries and so forth. Yes, in place, and so I just wanted to see if those things were the same.
We do have the signs up now, and some concerns that were raised in the past were that we had delayed putting up a fence around the property. we delayed it because we didn't want to put a permanent fence up and then have to take it down when we did the restoration work. And then when we negotiated our grazing agreement on the winter tract this last grazing season, we required an electric fence, a temporary electric fence that we put up to keep the cattle away from the waterways.
Bruce?
Tim, first, page 3 of your handout, bottom map. The other 4 maps, the other 3 maps on the back, page 2 of the front, all have north going, and this, the bottom one, no, not that one, nope, not that one, go back, that one. In here, you've got it upside down.
Oh, go to the next, this one here?
Yeah, with your overlays on it, and it took me a while to figure that out. I'm old,
Okay.
so help me. Keep north on top.
I was simply taking advantage of the photo we had, the aerial photo, but I will do that in the
Makes
future.
no sense. Okay, that's
Yeah.
one. The second one is this transfer part of the master plan that's been in the process from the beginning or early on in the program? I was trying to remember from our visit.
Well, we've always wanted to have good public access and our properties blocked up. I believe that conversations did occur in the very beginning of the process with this landowner. Initially, the landowner was not interested, and then changed his mind and expressed an interest in being included in selling and being included in the wildlife area.
Tim, I'm assuming that right now, you could probably access a boat from the road, and there is no access unless you have a boat.
The access that people have right now is basically to the Luckman tract. You can do that without a boat.
I'm saying today, there is no foot access because it's all underwater.
That's true.
It is in Winter Lake State.
Right, and this year that's happened more than in the past couple of years. There's a lot of water out there. One of the things we're going to do with the project that's scheduled this summer is to the berm that goes along there from North Bank Lane down to the Wheeler 2 track. We're going to elevate that a little bit to make foot access easier during those high water events.
And the parcel that we are talking about acquiring is in a different drainage district, so it's not within the area that the muted tide gates were the concern of the people. It's in a different.
Well, this is still in the same drainage district, but it's under the control, the proposed tide gate setup that's going to occur. There will be 3 different sets of tide gates, and the center set will serve the Winter Lake tract plus this piece right here, which is the China Camp Gun Club. And the focus there is going to be on wildlife habitat. The other tide gates, there's a tide gate that serves, and please forgive the exact boundaries, but it serves this property here and here. And the focus there is going to be on agricultural production in the summer, additional water in the winter, which will help us grow cocoa. And then there's a third set of tide gates that will be constructed that serves this area down here. And the tide gates for this area and this area will still focus on primarily on agricultural production.
So they won't have the tidal influence.
Well, the proposal, the water management plan from the Beaver Slough Drainage District does include some light daily tidal exchange in the channels, primarily to improve water quality. And that improved water quality will benefit fish, and it will be better for the cattle. Right now, the water quality in the summertime is not good at all.
Okay. We have 5 individuals signed up for public comment. Claire Bach, Tyler Alexander, Kathy McDonald. When you start testifying, state your name and where you're from. Thank you.
I'm Claire Clark, retired farmer and part-time conservation specialist from Corbin, Oregon. And I'd like to, first, I'll have to start with something off the subject, in that you had a discussion earlier about audio, meeting minutes and things like that. And I think that's a very nice idea, because we go to a lot of meetings and we miss things that we can't get to just because of scheduling constraints. And I would hope that you would do that with a microphone system that actually works, because I've had experiences just this last year with task force meetings that you really couldn't hear. Now, listening to those meetings are not exactly the funnest thing to do. It's the only way to get the information that we have straight from the members of the commission. So thank you for that. I would like to express my support for the Wheeler acquisition, especially on the contiguous properties that of existing wildlife habitat. I would hope that future acquisitions would have a clause that would protect those tracts from transfer to private lands, but rather to nonprofit organizations such as Nature Conservancy, such as Audubon, so that we don't run into a situation like we're running into with the LA State Forest. And so, in perpetuity, 50, 60, 70 years down the road, they're not running into some type of an example like that. And with the national scene as it is, we can run into that. We might be running into that. And I have an overall concern for the adequate wildlife, riparian, and wetland habitat and its corridors that connect those habitats. One of the things that brought to mind just in our last presentation on, or not the last presentation, but the habitat access presentation, was that can we imagine what will happen if the national forest, the Malheur, the Umatilla, the Ochico, is all put up for bid for private property, what the cost will be to the state for hunting and fishing access. So what I would hope that the commission would do, both as a commission body and you as individuals, would work to make sure that these federal lands stay as they are and that they are protected for public access and without having to pay a access fee like the Hancock group has. I just looked up the Hancock group on my phone, and they sell hunting and fishing access licenses, sort of like they do in the state. But can we imagine that kind of a group taking the entire national forest? So stop rambling and on to the other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler.
Yep, my name is Tyler Alexander with the Oregon Farm Bureau. By way of background, the Oregon Farm Bureau is a nonprofit general agricultural organization representing a little under 7,000 members, professionally engaged in farming, ranching, and some small forestry operations. OFB has had long time had concerns about the amount of land that has been transferred from private to public ownership, including significant investment in acquisition by OWEB and ODFW. For the past few years, we have been concerned about ODFW's process for acquisition of farm and ranch land, including a lack of opportunity for early engagement when the department is considering acquiring land, particularly farm and ranch land or land located in farm use zones. We believe that this unnecessarily exposes landowners to public conflicts and can also impair the productive capacity of neighboring lands. We think that the Coquille project evidences many of these concerns. Specifically, we did not know about this proposal until the Commission's agenda was released a few weeks ago. To the credit of the staff of ODFW, we've had many of our questions answered in a short time frame. That was pretty remarkable. However, there's still kind of the concern or question over long-term funding for operations and maintenance due to a transfer of land in fee simple that the department has sold. They're able to fund O&M up until 2023 biennium, I believe. But afterwards, where's the money going to come from? There's also a question over the appropriateness of whether the state should be getting an increased share in the drainage district, MODI. We hope that the Commission can address some of these concerns. We've spoken several times with the staff, with the process utilized by the department for acquisitions. We've asked and started to kind of engage in a discussion on how to improve their process to ensure that acquisitions are undertaken in a way that will allow for early engagement and address these kind of neighboring landowner conflicts prior to closing, which will ensure protections for infrastructure and other important features in ag areas. We hope that this commission will support staff working with us to improve process and ensure our members have meaningful opportunity to engage. And we would also, we're totally open to working with other stakeholders as well.
Thank you. Kathy.
Thank you. Chair Weber, members of the Commission, Director Melcher. My name is Kathy McDonald. I recently became the Director of Policy and External Affairs for the Nature Conservancy. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few comments in support of the Commission's vote to accept donation of the Wheeler 2 property as an addition to the Coquille Valley Wildlife Management Area. Having been with the Conservancy for many years as a conservation director, it's been my pleasure to work with the department on a wide range of fish and wildlife habitat projects that have benefited nature and people of Oregon, and we're pleased to be partners in this project as well. The Coquille Valley Wildlife Area is a prime example of the kind of project that is really designed to meet multiple benefits. This is why we thought it was worth it for us to work with our supporters to raise funds to help acquire this property and to get it into the hands of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. We really believe in the Coquille Valley Wildlife Management Area's vision that you have all provided and really support the management objectives and approach that the department is taking. As you know and have just heard from Tim, the Wheeler 2 property connects key habitat parcels. It's going to provide better access, improved habitat for fish and wildlife, educational opportunities, and also continue to achieve some of the agricultural outcomes that are important to the community and neighboring land uses. Well, many factors have led to the decline of coho, salmon, in the Coquille River. The key limiting factor is lack of access to these tidal wetlands or off-channel habitats that are so important for the species. Studies describe these freshwater tidal wetland habitats as collector sites for winter juvenile salmon. And here salmon can get out of the high flow and rest, and also have access to adequate food supplies so that they can get larger and heavier. And this all results, as you know, in increased survival rates. This habitat has been the key limiting factor in the Coquille Valley, and that's been recognized by the department's coastal conservation plan for coho, as well as the NOAA recovery plan for coastal. Studies by the department have shown that as much approximately 75% of the coho juveniles can be lost without access to this off-channel habitat. And so it's really important that we build back these kinds of access projects so that we can improve the population. The Coquille Valley Wildlife Area fills this gap, and So it's a really important next step in fixing habitat for the coastal coho. In closing, we support the department's overall vision and management plan for the Coquille Valley Wildlife Management Area. And we especially appreciate that you've taken steps to make sure that there are multiple benefits that will come from this project. If successfully implemented, agricultural landowners within the Winter Lake area will have better control over water that can both help them achieve their goals and improve fish habitat. The public will have increased access, and fish will have improved passage to overwintering habitat. I know that many of you have had the opportunity to go to the wildlife management area and see and talk to the local partners and landowners to really understand how this project will provide these benefits. I really appreciate the Commissioner's time in doing so. The Conservancy is pleased to support this project. We've raised private dollars to support the acquisition of the property, and really feel honored to be able to have you consider accepting a donation of the property for the department and for Oregon Indians in the future. The project represents the type of win-win project that the Commission, we feel the Commission and the Nature Conservancy should support, as well as all Oregonians. And we really urge the commissioners, you commissioners, to vote yes to accept the donation of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of this panel? Bruce?
I'm going to support this, but I just wanted to address Tyler specifically. Wall Street Journal yesterday announced that we were very rapidly coming to the time when we were going to have less than 2 million farms in the United States. This will be the lowest level since the Louisiana Purchase. I don't think any of us should take that lightly. In the short term, I've been on the commission. We have had a couple acquisitions of land. One of the Deschutes Ranch was actually on the private market for an extended period of time before it came to us. And it didn't, this was the best use. Looking at this, having visited a couple years ago, or when I was first on the commission, it was clear that it was a marginal ag piece of property, but a very important piece of property. So while I appreciate the position that we will oppose, that Farm Bureau generally opposes movement from private to public, I think if it is a productive piece of ag land, in all likelihood, I will be on your side. If it is something like this, or then I think we have to put it where it is going to be of most benefit to all Oregonians, and let's get more farms. Thanks.
Okay, thank you,
Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Kathy. First, congratulations on the new job. I guess not that new really, but and I wanted to thank Kathy for the partnership over the years, and we truly have a strong relationship with the Nature Conservancy. That doesn't mean we've always agreed. I mean, we have a number of little things that we don't agree on. We agree to disagree, but we continue to work on these places where we do agree. And so really value the partnership and appreciate your fundraising for this particular acquisition.
Thank you. We value our relationship with the department as well. Look forward to working together.
Thank you. Brian McLaughlin and Tom Wolf. Brian.
Thank you, Chair Weber, members of the Commission, Director Melcher. My name is Brian McLaughlin. I reside in Portland, Oregon. I'm Vice President for Conservation for the Association of Steelheaders. We wanted to come here today to express our support for the acquisition of the Wheeler 2 property, and also to express our general support for the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area. There's been a lot of multiple benefits that have been expressed with recreational access, wildlife habitat, waterfowl habitat, and of course what's very important to steelheaders is habitat for juvenile coho. As the commission knows, for the recovery of coho, we've done a lot in the last decade. We've certainly dramatically reduced the production of hatchery fish. We've dramatically reduced both commercial and small harvest off our coast. And that's been recognized by especially the federal agencies in the last status review for coho. But what still remains the key limiting factor is habitat. And among habitat, the key limiting factor is overwintering habitat. And that is specifically addressed by the overall project, and we understand by this acquisition that there's going to be a kind of a win-win where agriculture can be in there in the summer, and there's going to be some habitat, the water's going to be in there in the winter, and those coho can use that area, and it's supposed to result in a substantial increase for coho. So we just want to come here and support this acquisition, support the general project, and say to the department that we support these types of projects, and say thank you also to the Nature Conservancy for their efforts in spearheading and raising the funds to do this. Thank you.
Chair Weber, Commissioners, Director Melcher. For the record, my name is Tom. How come that's on yellow already? yeah, that's...
It's getting
well, it's nice to know that even though you've been sick, you still have a great wit. And one of these days I'm going to have to learn when that great wit's going to show up. So anyway, for the record, my name is Tom Wolf. I'm with the Trout Unlimited, representing our 3,200 members in the state of Oregon and 155,000 nationally. Acquiring and protecting public land is a primary mission of Trout Unlimited, and we look at this acquisition of the Wheeler 2 through the help of Nature Conservancy is a great thing. It provides some great habitat for coho and access to some opportunities for hunters and other and wildlife viewing. Currently in Oregon, and I didn't realize this until I looked it up, 60.4% of Oregon's lands are open to the public, are owned either by federal, state, county, or other agencies that allow public access. I think that I wish it was more, but that's pretty good. And as we face what's going on, as we look at comparison to the United States, what is going on in Europe, where to access land, hunt and fish, you have to pay millions of dollars. A beat on the Test River in Great Britain costs equivalently of, I want to say, $100,000 a year for some of those people. It's fishing and hunting is becoming the domain of rich people in Europe. It's not the domain of rich people in the United States, despite what we spend on equipment. And projects like this, projects like what the Nature Conservancy is doing to acquire land on the Wheeler is a great thing for people that want to hunt and fish and view wildlife in Oregon. And I support this. I think it's a great project. I support the whole concept. And Trout Unlimited urges that you acquire this land. Thank you.
Any questions of Brian or Tom? Well, thank you. Do you have any more questions of Kim? I guess in regard to this, it's not a question, it's just a comment that up until Beaver Hill Road slid into the canyon, I drove by there a lot. Now I can't drive by, but I could, but it's a long trip. But I think this is a really good program, and I think that the well thought out, accurate property that we needed, and I certainly support this purchase. Any other comment?
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
I think it's a great project, by the way, too. And I've been a long-term fan of Nature Conservancy for decades, and even employed. Not nearly as long as Kathy, but it was a good, a, 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 good, a But anyway, especially appreciate the side channel habitat that's being provided for this project. I think that's great. It's very much needed. So I move to approve the land acquisition by donation from the Nature Conservancy of approximately 95 acres adjacent to the Coquille Valley Wildlife Area, and direct staff to complete the acquisition pursuant to the processes required by the Oregon Administrative Rule.
The motion seconded by Commissioner Buckmaster. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, I think we're done with the agenda.
We are. I did want to, we'll be able to adjourn here and then go to lunch for those who want to stay for lunch. I did want to mention a couple things. And before we leave the Wheeler acquisition piece, I wanted to remind, and or for the benefit of any new commissioners, remind you folks that we embarked on this, I believe it was almost 10 years ago. Started discussing it internally, the development of a wildlife area in the Coquille Valley. And the piece that really gets overlooked in this whole discussion as we've been acquiring these relatively small parcels is that we traded about 600 acres of timberland that the department owned. It was publicly owned timberland to really start this process of acquiring properties in the Coquille Valley. We included in that trade substantial buffer zones to protect the local city watershed, as well as expanded buffer zones around any marbled murrelet habitat. But nonetheless, it was actually a land trade where we put public land back into the private sector hands, and now are acquiring some private land in the Coquille Valley. So it's been a long haul. It's a great project. It's one that as we look at the things we do, we look at the things that are delivered to us on a daily basis as results of problems or victories. They're usually the result of things that occurred many decades ago. And I think many decades from now, people are going to look at Coquille and think that this was a great move by the department and commission over the years. So the last thing I just wanted to mention before we adjourn, Mr. Chair, is we did, of course, receive the letter from the governor yesterday, and hopefully you have all received that as well. I just wanted to let the commission know that I will be filing a rulemaking notice and initiating whatever the next step may be here for either the March commission meeting, or we'll schedule a special commission meeting post-March, but prior to first week in April. So with that, unless there's other questions or comments, Mr. Chair, that's all I have under other business.
Just one comment. The Coquille Lake, I don't think we should overlook what department employees, after their tenure with the department, give back to the state. Steve Denny did yeoman's work on the issue with Nature Conservancy. Craig Ely has been here today doing heavy lifting on A&H. So just because they quit getting paid doesn't mean they quit working for Oregon, and I think we owe them thanks.
I concur. Looks like the entire commission. No further business. We're adjourned.